Hello and welcome. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Really excited for a dev stream today. I'm Andrew, also known as Atropos, in the Foundry VTT dev community, and I'm joined by Kim.
Hi everyone.
Hope you're all doing great. Hope you can hear us just fine. Let us know how volume levels and stuff are working out, and yeah, happy to have you all here. Sorry for a little bit of a delay getting the stream going. We were working up until the last minute on some exciting things. Happy to be able to hang out with you all this afternoon and give you a glimpse into the inner workings of what the team has been up to. I'm going to be... The plan for today, I made some notes for myself to keep me honest. The plan for the day is to talk a little bit about the anniversary, sort of recent happenings, stuff that's going on at the moment in the Foundry community. Do a deep dive into what we've been working on for Prototype 3, which is going to be released imminently. And then we'll do a little giveaway to get, maybe get someone a Foundry VTT license or two, and then we'll, round it out with some announcements about stuff that's upcoming in the very near future. So hopefully that sounds like a good plan to everyone, and I'm excited to jump into it. See a couple of you asking about, screen positioning and stuff. I'm not sure there's anything I can do about that necessarily, but sorry. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump in. I want to talk first about the anniversary celebration, which is super exciting because, as hopefully most of you know, Foundry VTT is a year older this week. We have reached the 2-year milestone. It's like super incredible that it's been 2 years since the software is released. It simultaneously feels like it's been a lot longer than that, and also that it hasn't been anywhere near that amount of time. So just with us being so busy and doing so much, the progression of time is really sort of surreal and doesn't quite make sense to me anymore. And that's maybe partly like COVID and Foundry and life and everything else that's going on. It's just sort of a blur. But what do you think, Kim? Does it feel like that amount of time to you or not at all?
No, gone way quicker. We've been kept so busy, I think it's largely just goes right by.
Yeah. But we have an exciting week's worth of stuff happening this week. So probably most importantly, we're running a sale as we do each year on our anniversary. The software is currently 20% off. And as part of our sale, we were really excited to introduce a first phase of redesign for our website. So I can pull that up. Our website has a beautiful new homepage that we were working hard on within the team. This was sort of one of the first projects that Keora, who has joined the team, has been working on with us, doing a lot of the design work and thought process around evolving our sort of brand presentation and color palette. The new site is live and it's really beautiful. We've updated the homepage and the purchase page where you can go buy the software, where it is currently on sale. And we are going to be rolling out that this sort of approach to redesign to the remainder of the site over the coming weeks. I don't think there's a exact timetable on that, but we are going to be taking the lessons from this design and rolling them out to additional pages and sort of eventually polishing everything up to have this type of aesthetic, while adding some features along the way. We definitely have some features that are planned to be added that we haven't gotten around to yet. But yes, it's an exciting thing. The website was something that I kind of threw together pretty hastily in the lead up to the initial release, because it was gonna be a product that we were gonna sell and I needed a place to sell it. And I think the whole website kind of came together in about like a 3-month period, before the initial release, in addition to everything else that was going on at that point in time. So it was a little bit, well, it was functional, I guess. It was probably the nicest way to say it. And yeah, but we wanted to have something a little bit more than functional now that Foundry has grown, something that reflects our product and our brand a little bit more. And so, yeah, that's what we're working on. And it will be, an ongoing road from here. But yes. So that's an exciting thing. And as I mentioned, I'll just keep saying it. The software is on sale right now. So it's a good chance to get it if you're on the fence, if you're thinking about it, if you haven't yet, if you have friends who might be interested, maybe folks who are in your group that they've been introduced to Foundry but they haven't taken the plunge yet, or if you have someone in your circle who you think would love to receive a gift, we also have a really easy way to give gifts of the software. So if you buy a license, you can then, there's a self-service transfer form where you can transfer that license to a friend or someone else. So it's very easy to purchase as a gift for someone as well, if that's something that you would consider. Anyways, but really appreciate everyone's support and helping to share the love and share the word of what we're making here, so that so that people keep supporting us, keep purchasing the software. That's what keeps us going. So thank you all for that. I think what's next? Talking about the anniversary celebration. So we have some other events coming up this week. Tomorrow, there will be a number of releases of things. So I think Prototype 3, which you're going to see today, which is really geared for our developer community, that version of that prototype version of V10 is going to release tomorrow, I think. And then we also have some really hype-worthy releases of premium content tomorrow, with 2 releases from Paizo. Chapter 2 of Outlaws of Alkenstar, which is their brand new adventure path, as well as the really mega, completely over-the-top, sort of ultra version of Abomination Vaults made specifically for Foundry VTT. It's really exciting. It's going to be, not going to be, it is super, super good. And so those both drop tomorrow, which is very exciting. So that's tomorrow. And then Thursday, we're going to do another stream. It's going to be sort of a fun stream focused on just kind of showing how far Foundry's come. We have not prepared for this stream on Thursday. It's going to be a very improvised kind of, we're just going to wing it. But what we're going to do, hilarity is likely to ensue. We're probably going to be very embarrassed because things aren't going to work. And, anyways, we're going to struggle through it together. But what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way back to the very first version of Foundry VTT, and we're going to pull it up and we're going to play around with it and see what it could do. And we're going to work our way forward, pulling down each major version one at a time, and see how the software has evolved over time. From a place of being extremely rudimentary to where it is now with V10 coming out. So that should be pretty fun to get a look back in time at the past of Foundry, warts and all. Another thing that's actually happening tomorrow, I think, is we're going to have an article posted that kind of gives a textual summary of where we see ourselves, sort of a yearly year in review kind of opportunity to reflect and to think about where the software is, where it's come, from, and where it's going. And so that's something that I also hope that you'll get a chance to read. On Friday, we are participating in the PaizoCon event schedule. We have a panel where myself, Shane, Anathema, and Amy from Sigil, Andrew White from Paizo, maybe a special guest, I don't know, maybe not, but we're going to be on PaizoCon on the official Paizo Twitch channel. We'll probably be hosting it here on this Twitch channel as well. Panel to discuss, what is Foundry VTT? What are we doing with Paizo? What kind of stuff are we doing? What interesting things are coming up? Probably the audience for that panel is going to be mostly people who don't know all those things already. Because I think there's a lot of folks that will be engaging with PaizoCon that have, maybe heard peripherally about Foundry, but don't necessarily know what it's about yet. And so, don't expect anything like completely groundbreaking if you already know all of the ins and outs of everything, Foundry and Pathfinder related. But I hope you'll still consider joining, because I think it'll be a really nice event for us to sort of in an official capacity celebrate the cool work that we've been doing there. And then on Saturday, more Pathfinder related stuff. Because Abomination Vaults is releasing this week, we are going to do an actual play. So I hope some of you caught last month during our celebrations for Beginner Box Day, when the official Pathfinder Beginner Box released, we did an actual play, sort of a two-parter of Menace Under Otari. We introduced some, sort of wacky new characters, and we managed to prevail against all odds and against that sort of introductory adventure. But we're going to carry that party forward and begin exploring the Fog Fen and Gauntlight and the Abomination Vaults. Abomination Vaults is a massive, massive adventure, so we're not going to play the whole thing, but we are going to sort of embark on that adventure and showcase what the content is like, and have some fun banter, and explore the content a bit. And that will be two parts. First part is this Saturday, and then part 2 will be the following Saturday. And we'll get as far as we get, which may not be very far, depending on how quickly and horribly we all perish. Yes, so those are all of the week's events. The sale on licenses is ongoing until midnight at the end of the month. So that would be midnight on the Tuesday the 31st. The sale is ongoing. There's a little countdown timer for you. I think that's about all of my anniversary week announcements. Kim, have I forgotten anything?
I'm not on the ball at all for anniversary weeks.
Oh my goodness.
It sounds right.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, terrible co-host.
Put a little bit of low-key background music on here. Okay, so the other announcements, I mentioned content releases. We had some big Warhammer releases this week, 3 of them, in fact. There were releases for Wrath and Glory, Soulbound, and Warhammer Fantasy. All 3 products got big releases from Cubicle 7. That's very exciting stuff. And then I also mentioned the Paizo releases that are tomorrow. There's a couple of Kickstarters that are sort of in full swing or approaching their end. Everyday Heroes, which is a big project to reboot D20 Modern with a bunch of like licensed IPs and stuff. It's pretty cool. That's currently live on Kickstarter. And Blade Runner, which is obviously an amazing franchise from Free League, who are also amazing game developers. So it's sort of like a match made in heaven. Blade Runner from Free League is also on Kickstarter and is almost done. They have, I think, 2 days left, less than 2 days left now of their Kickstarter. But both of those projects are going to be on Foundry VTT. So if you back them on Kickstarter or choose to get them later, you'll have the opportunity to get those products for Foundry VTT, which is pretty cool. I hope the Blade Runner game for Foundry comes with like a bunch of amazing artwork.
Yeah, that's the coolest.
Free League always has like super great art, and Blade Runner is just like an IP that has such a cool sort of I don't know, vibe, tone. I bet there would be a lot of cool artwork. All right. Well, I think that does it for recent happenings. Anything else that we should announce, anniversary or otherwise? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
There's a lot going on that we could say things about, but I think let's go ahead and jump into the heart of today's stream because there's a lot to cover. We want to showcase V10 Prototype 3 and all of the amazing work that the team has been doing to continue innovating and improving the Foundry software. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about all of those features we've been working on. I want to first give a little bit of high-level context, a reminder about V10 in general, some of the areas that we're focusing on. There are a number of focus areas that the team has invested into, and you'll see those represented in the Prototype 3 sort of deep dive notes as we go. But one key focus area is the architecture of the data model, so the way we store data, the way we process it, validate it, transact data. That's very exciting, mostly on the development side, but it's a key sort of foundational underpinning of all of the data management that Foundry does. And so it touches a lot and it improves a lot. So that's one big thing. The key sort of flagship feature of V10 is a redesign of the journal system. Really exciting work that Kim's been involved in very heavily. And that sort of journal V2 is going to be, sort of probably like the flagship, user-facing feature of V10, I think. And what we've really been focusing on in the prototype phase is the sort of core underlying functionality for how engaging with journal entries works. So it may not be especially beautiful yet. It may not have some of the special integrations that we want journals to eventually have. But what we have been focusing on in the prototype phase is the actual infrastructure of how do journal entries store their data? What is that schema? What functionality do they have? How do you edit journal entries and engage with the editing process? Because writing is a important part of journals. And then, of course, more organizational tools with pages and better control, better configurability about progressive reveal of information, better ways to organize your journal content into multiple pages to control the sort of flow of readability of it. And yeah, so a lot of awesome stuff on journals, and we'll talk at some length about those things. Some other key features of V10. Vision modes is a very exciting thing that I'm sure you're all eager to see the first glimpse of. We teased it last dev stream, but it is now ready for prototyping. It's ready to take the stage. And so, the way that token vision works is now improved in some very major ways. And so I'm excited to talk about that with everyone and sort of get into some details about that. And then we've got some interaction improvements with pings. We didn't do all of the user interaction enhancement stuff that we might have wanted to, but Kim's here in my game. As you can see, we can both kind of ping the map. We've got some different flavors of pings, like little sort of alert chevrons. As a GM, we can, draw the user's attention to a particular area of the map. That can cause everyone to kind of focus in on that area. The pings are really great. I mean, it's a system that Foundry's kind of been missing for a little while, and so really happy to get that added in. And
yeah, that was a free project Friday, which kind of talk about a bit.
Yeah, we can talk about that a bit. Other overview stuff. Cody has been hard at work on making improvements for our module system world developers with some key improvements to the package manifest. So those translate into changes to the data structure for how you define a package and the capabilities that are therein. And it gives us a better foundation to do some things immediately as well as to do some things in the future that this upgraded approach to the manifest definition will allow us to do. So that's something that will be important to talk about, especially for the devs in the audience. And then Adventures is something that we introduced initially in V9, but as a very preliminary sort of secret tester feature. We made some big changes along the way in the process of testing it for V10, but we now can introduce the concept of the adventure document in V10 for everybody to use, along with some corresponding tools to build adventures, to package them up, and to import them. So that's going to be really exciting to show. That's something that you guys have not seen yet, and we'll be seeing for the first time today. And so
that is a huge feature that shouldn't really be understated. Coming with V10, it's huge for content creators.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a foundation that will sort of revolutionize the way that content is able to be packaged for Foundry VTT. So that's very exciting. So yeah, those are like some big things, and then in addition to that, we have just a ton of like little, quality of life improvements that we've made all over the software. So there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to get into. We've been very busy, as I hope you can tell. And yeah, I'm excited to dig in and showcase a lot of those things. Some high level, so just a little bit more high level context before we dive in. We are now done with prototype 3. We did take an extra prototyping phase this time around. If you may recall, in V9, we only did 2 prototypes. We have done 3 this time because we needed some extra time to let all of these different projects that I just mentioned mature a bit. But we are ready with all of them to move them out of the prototype phase into the development phase, where the next phase is all about getting testing and feedback and engagement with our community developers. So the users of our API, we really want to engage with you starting tomorrow when prototype 3 comes out. We really want to engage with you all to test out these features, to see how they're working for your modules, for your systems, what limitations do you encounter, where are some areas where they're not sufficiently flexible, where they need some more configurability or opportunity for modules and systems to engage in places where they can't really get at it right now. We want to know if you're able to use them without experiencing like a painful migration, or whether there's some facet of what you were doing before that doesn't migrate easily from V9 to V10. Those are all areas of feedback that we specifically want to collect data on. So we'll be engaging with you all on that. Now, how long the development phase lasts, how long the subsequent user testing phase lasts, that's what needs to happen in order for us to get to a stable release. How long that process is going to depend on the nature of the feedback that we get. I think at this point, it's safe to say we are pretty much, we're not going to be adding major, big new features at this point. We'll maybe add some little features that complement what we've done so far. But really, it's about sort of polishing and locking down and getting everything that we've done in the prototype phases to a point of being really stable. So how long that process will take is a little bit hard to predict. I'm guessing it will probably be a month and a half to 2 months. Might be shorter, might be longer, but that's kind of about what I have in my head in terms of where we are now, how long we need to make this to a point where it can be really stable. I think we're probably looking something at like end of July for a stable release, but we'll see. Who knows? It will depend a lot on the feedback we get from the community.
Someone asked about tours. It's something we didn't cover, but that's in prototype.
Yeah, we do have the tour framework. We have a tooltip framework. Those are some really exciting sort of UX features that we've added in addition to the bigger stuff. So like these new tooltips, really great stuff. The tour, I can showcase the tour at some point. We did show that last stream, but I can show a little bit more on that. Okay, so I think that's all I have for overview. And I think at this point I want to jump into the actual rundown of features, if that sounds good to you, Kim.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'm going to move my screen to sort of be like 3 wide so that I can have notes. These notes aren't finished yet. As you can see, they're very much in a draft state, but we do have the export of our patch notes that we can go over. Okay, so because this is a prototype, a number of these things are going to be a little bit sort of like API-centric, and so I apologize if there's a mix of things that are a bit more like dev-focused and things that are a bit more like shiny and user-focused. There's going to be some of each, so if you're here for the shinies, stay tuned. There will be some nice, beautiful things to show. If you're here to know the gory details of what's changing in the API, there's going to be some of that too. All right, so let's start with package management. So we have a new approach to some manifest changes. There are a couple of them. So I think the first one that bears mentioning here, and you know what, actually I'm going to say, I hope either Matt or Cody or someone from the team, I hope, is watching and can take some notes while we go over this, because as we review these notes, there's probably going to be a couple of things that might not work. It is just a prototype. There's going to be a couple of things where we need to take some notes to flesh out a couple of things. One thing that I think isn't necessarily clearly stated in this breaking changes log, we talk about compatibility, we talk about relationships, but the name to ID change is a big one that we should make sure to have as like a top level bullet point here. So one of the biggest changes that we're making with packages is we are switching from name as the field which provides a unique identifier for the package to ID. And that's done to reduce some confusion, to kind of avoid a situation where new developers may mistake name for being something human readable and ID for being something, not. So that's a key change that we're making. Now, it won't cause any immediate breaking change for packages. We do have a built-in migration path for this. Any module that uses name will continue to work. There will be some warnings that will get logged that will prompt you to think about updating over time. But I think by the time we get to V13, I believe is the target that we set, although Cody may correct me, we are going to be expecting all packages to be using IDs instead of name. So that is a big change, but it's one that we'll take gradually. It's a simple change, easy to make, and it's one that there's lots of time in order to make that happen. So we'll continue to support both for a while, and eventually we will land in a place where packages have IDs. Another thing that we changed about the package manifest is that we've changed the way that we structure data that refers to compatibility and versions. So we currently have 2 fields in the manifest, one for like a compatible core version, one for a maximum, sort of maximum supported version. We've moved that, the minimum core version and compatible core version. We've moved those 2 fields to a single compatibility object that is a little bit more simply expressed. So the compatibility related to a package now has 3 fields that you can provide: minimum, maximum, and verified. And between those 3 fields, you can express a lot of different statements about what the compatibility state of your package is. So minimum is a core software version that is absolutely required at minimum in order for your package to function. Maximum is a maximum core software version that beyond which your package is known to not function. And verified is sort of like the intermediate checkpoint of the sort of latest known compatible version, where we may be at 9.263 now, and you believe that your package is compatible all the way through version 9, so your maximum may end up being 9, but you can state that I verified compatibility specifically with 9.265 or whatever. So that's all of 3 of these are optional. Now, it's helpful for you to provide at least a minimum. If you provide anything, a minimum is probably really preferable if you give it. But they are optional. So that is that set of changes, and we are going to have a bunch of documentation on our API docs when the time comes. We're already working on it. Cody's actually put that docs together. I just didn't quite get it deployed in time. So we'll have a documentation page that has detail on all of the new manifest fields, the changes that need to happen to move from V9 to V10 manifest schema, stuff like that. While we are on the topic of manifest changes, we are enhancing the way that we express relationships between packages. So there's lots of different types of relationships between packages. There could be a strict dependency, like package A strictly requires package B. There could be a sort of optional benefit, like if you have package B, you get some added optional benefit with package A. It could be that packages A and B are known to conflict with each other and they can't work if you are using them both. There's lots of different types of relationships between packages, and so where we previously just had a dependencies array, which was kind of ambiguous, functionally it meant strictly required dependencies, but some people weren't using it that way. Some people wanted a way to express optionals, things like that. We're migrating to a more flexible relationships object with multiple types of relationships that can be expressed, and for each type of relationship you can express an inner compatibility object. So you have a lot of configurability around saying like how your package works with some other package and for what range of versions and things like that. So there's a lot of power that is coming into the system there. That will, take some time to mature, but I think it's going to be a really better foundation for us moving forward. And as Matt says, relationship status, it's complicated. It is a little complicated, but yes, there is some good stuff coming there for the developers in the audience. Okay. Moving on to some other breaking changes, and I'm just going to cover those first just so the devs who are watching us today know what to expect in terms of things that will cease to work the way they did before. The role table result needs to change a little bit to resolve some naming collisions. So this is the individual embedded document within a role table. Some fields have been renamed in that document. So collection is now document collection, to be a bit more specific. Result ID is now document ID, to be a bit more specific. And the reset method of the role table, the parent role table, that method name now collides with the reset method of the base data model. So that method has been named to reset results. So there's 3 breaking changes for role tables that you should be aware of. Each of them has the first 2 have backwards compatible support. The third one doesn't, because there's not really any way to provide backwards compatible support. So that is an immediately breaking change on that third one. Hopefully only affects a very small number of you, but if you are affected, we'll help you get that sorted out. It's a very easy change to make. You just have to rename your method use, the method that you're calling.
Grab the prototype and let us know.
Yeah, please check out Prototype 3 when it releases and let us know if you have any trouble getting that to work, if you are doing stuff in the role tables space and you're making changes there. Other breaking changes. So this one's pretty significant. So I'm going to come back to the canvas block in just a second. I'm going to mention a couple of the other ones first, which are much smaller. So we've changed the way that we configure font families in order to support a more robust declaration of font definitions. Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. The MR for this is actually still pending. So
we expect it will be in Prototype 3.
Depending on what your feedback is, but currently there's the font families array, which just defines a list of font names. In the future, we wanted to allow GMs to be able to like upload fonts into their Foundry data directory and check, like list them and give them names and say this font is for this family with this weight, this is an italic font, all that sort of stuff. So in order to accommodate that, we've had to expand the data model so that it can represent things like font weights and families, and they can all belong to the same family and stuff like that.
Yeah, so this provides a framework for allowing developers and eventually users to sort of upload and manage custom fonts that can then be used as part of the editing experience, which is going to be very cool. It does require a little bit of a breaking change in order to make it happen, though, because the current font family's configuration is just not sufficient to support that.
It's deprecated, but so there's like a bit of a deprecation path, but it's breaking because it doesn't work in all cases because of the way it's done.
Yeah. Another little change that will have a deprecation path for a while is we have a new helper method called isEmpty, which sort of generalizes testing whether an object is lacking in content. We previously had a helper method that we use in a bunch of places called isObjectEmpty. I'm sure some of you are using that in your systems and modules and stuff. But isEmpty now does everything that isObjectEmpty does, but it works for more data types. So we're just sort of generalizing on this sort of common use isEmpty method. So that's another little one. So then some of the bigger stuff on the game canvas. This is really, the reason that we did this is really related to getting the most out of vision modes and getting the most out of the opportunity to improve some aspects of canvas structure, which will set us up in the most powerful way for the future. So what we did is that we eliminated some of the container separation of the hierarchy of the game canvas. Now, the game canvas used to be very hierarchical in nature, in its structure, so containers within containers within containers within containers. And what that means is that a certain container in the sort of z-index order of how they're stacked vertically is always above a certain other container, which means that the content of that container is always above or below the content of the other container. In practical terms, what this meant is that, like, drawings were always below tokens, and tokens were always below overhead tiles, and templates were always above the grid. And that makes sense as an initial set of assumptions that would allow the canvas to work. But we have been able to break that assumption in a fairly powerful way, and it is a breaking change, but it's a powerful breaking change that allows us to do some much better things. So let me switch here to a different scene. I'll pull up the console, and I guess I have to be mindful of where our webcams are. So let me take a second to position this somewhere that can work. So the primary canvas group, which still exists, now has a very sort of flat array of children instead of a hierarchical set of child containers. So that's a pretty big change, because it means that we don't necessarily have all tokens above all tiles above all, drawings. There is the ability to have kind of an intermixing of those objects, and we can fine-tune the control of rendering in a way that sets us up in a really powerful way for the future. So instead of an arbitrary sort of assumption, and instead of an arbitrary z-index, we now have a system that allows us to position individually renderable canvas objects in a sort of synthetic z-coordinate system of elevation. And that z-coordinate system of elevation is both functional today in some really useful ways, but also going to be a really powerful component of scene levels, which is a framework and a system that we are intending to do in a future major version. So this sort of sets some of the foundation for that, and I can show like a quick example of what this means in practice. So I have a scene here. This is a really lovely animated video map from Chepeku. These tokens are really great too. They're from Devon Knight, who has some animated tokens that are just like awesome. Love animated tokens. But I put two treetops here on this map. These are both tiles. And at the moment, we do still just have a sort of strict distinction between overhead and underfoot tiles, but only in the UI. In the API, in the data structure, tiles can actually kind of have flexible elevation now. But what this means is these are both tree canopies. They're both overhead tiles. So if we have a token that wanders beneath the canopy, we have this sort of radial occlusion behavior that's configured for that tile that, you know, is the same way that it exists, you know, today in V9. And so as the token moves under the trees, the tree kind of can cut away and show where the token is. And that's for a token that's on ground level. Now a token could be, you know, 10 feet in the air, and you know they're still underneath the tree because we have an assumption that the tree is more than 10 feet tall. But if the token is 25 feet in the air, then this token who's sort of flying around at 25 feet elevation is not underneath the tree, they're above the tree, they're higher than the tree, and so because of their elevation, they're, you know, over top of the overhead tiles, not underneath them. And you can have sort of a combination of things where, you know, if you have one token that's underneath, one token that's above, I can select both tokens and you see sort of, you can easily see like which is under and which is above. And so the system's very nice. It sort of responds a little bit dynamically to the position, the relative positioning of tokens and tiles in determining, you know, whether the tree canopy needs to be occluded or not. Now, this is like just the very bare bones of what will be a much larger and much more robust system in the future. Now, we're not building that much larger and much more robust system right now, but we are setting the foundation for it so that we can allow a more gradual path of working in that direction and working with our module developers who also do things in this type of arena. At the time, for the moment, we do have a binary distinction with tiles in terms of is the tile overhead or not overhead. So if I change this tile to be, you know, underfoot, then all of these tokens are over it, regardless of their elevation. However, if a token were, say, to burrow at minus 10 feet, suddenly this token that's minus 10 feet, they're actually below the ground. They're actually below the tree that is at 0 elevation. So, so even the scene background and even the tiles on the background layer, like this warrior has sort of clipped through the floor. Now we don't have an occlusion for it, but you know, you do still see their their nameplate and their bounding box and stuff. So if they pop up through the ground, this guy is just burrowed up from underneath, and you can have that kind of elevation-based mechanic. So that's a kind of interesting thing. Another interesting thing about it is, as I mentioned, tiles right now are just binary. They're either overhead or not overhead. Now, we don't like that. That's not what we want to have. We want each tile to be able to have a configurable elevation, but that was not something, the time was not right for us to tackle that right now in V10. So, what we did as just a short-term sort of migrate shim type thing is for each scene, you can configure what the level of foreground elevation is. So you only have one foreground and you only have one background, but you can at least configure how high the foreground is. So if you wanted to say that these trees, everything in the foreground layer is actually, 50 feet tall, I can make the foreground elevation 50. And if the foreground elevation's 50, then this token that's at 25 feet is, that's because I moved that tile to the background. This token that's at 25 feet should be below, so it should be below the tree. That is now 50 feet, where previously 25 was like enough to be above the tree. So if I go up to 60 feet, then I can be above these trees. So it's not everything that we want to do with this system. It's only a fraction of what we want to do with this system, but you do at least get a little bit more configurability around specifying, what is the altitude of your foreground, and therefore the elevation of tokens will respond to that in a way that gives you some nice sort of gameplay interaction. The background, I see a question from Bad Ideas Bureau. The background is always at 0. That is a limitation of the short-term, what the situation is going to be in V10. I think that's something that we will not be stuck in that world where the background has to be at 0 forever, but for V10, the background is at 0, and you can control where the foreground is. All right, let's see. Some other things that are consequences of this change is that some aspects of the token UI, and this is still a work in progress, but some aspects of the token UI have moved from the primary canvas group to the interface. So things like token borders. It used to be that when a token like this would go under an overhead tile, part of its border would get occluded, would get clipped by the tile. And if the token is all the way under the overhead tile, there was like kind of no way to know that there was a token there. Like there's no border, there's no anything. And so now the token borders, the token nameplates, those are all moved to the interface group out of the primary canvas group. What's rendered in the primary canvas group is a linked mesh. And that has some other side effects. So for example, if I create like a really bright red light source, it used to be that, this really intense, really bright red light source would also affect the appearance of the token border. So if I have a token who's like a friendly with like a blue border, it used to be that, that blue would then get tinted by the red light, and you could sort of it would be hard to tell like what color actually is the border because the border's just been affected by lighting. So the borders are now moved to the interface group. There's other changes like that are related. So we've really tried to separate out things like the HUD and the sort of interface from what actually is affected as like a tangible component of the scene. So like these new targeting indicators that Kim made, really lovely. Like these targeting indicators are also like not affected by lighting because they've moved to the interface group. So I guess that was kind of a lot to mention, but hopefully it's clear in at some conceptual level, what we've done there. And this is really paving a pathway for a much more powerful and much more flexible future Foundry VTT, where this is like a little half step in that direction, where we're going to take a much bigger step next time. All right, let's see.
I haven't been super involved with the canvas rearrangement stuff, but from what I've gathered, it's really nice ironing out, making things clearer. Also, we've done a big pass with our new documentation framework to sort of like document all of that a lot more nicely.
Yes, yeah, we're working on the documentation framework. It is still a work in progress, but if I pull up the V10 API docs, a feature of the docs is under the client documentation. We are documenting, various canvas components, so things like the primary canvas group and the way that it's ordered, this documentation with like the new links, the new description of all of the properties, like this is all new, and we're working on, you know, making that documentation more solid as part of this process. Still more work to do there always, but yeah.
Yeah, we gotta learn doc.
Yeah. So one other thing that I need to mention as a breaking change with regards to Canvas is that we've changed the way that flags are passed to updates to the perception manager, the Canvas perception manager. This is something that's pretty low level, and I suspect that the vast majority of you aren't using this feature. But for those of you who are using this feature, this is an important change. So the perception manager, which is referenced as a singleton canvas perception, we've changed the way that flags for like what updates when a perception change is scheduled. We've changed these flags in a fairly significant way. Now there is a backwards compatibility layer that adds support for still passing flags in the old format, as well as to specifically opt in and avoid some, you know, improve efficiency and things like that. So this is something to be aware of. There is just a change if you were calling like perception update, perception schedule, those methods that you may have been using, you're going to want to change a little bit the way that you pass those flags. They will still continue to work the old way. They just do a little bit of extra check. They're going to throw a console warning. It's stuff that you can avoid by migrating to the new spec. All right, I think that does it for breaking changes. Those are the things where specifically we had to sort of force developers to make a change in order for us to do the things that we wanted to do. There are other breaking changes in prototypes 1 and 2, so this is not an exhaustive list. This is an incremental list of the things that are breaking changes in addition to the things that are breaking in prototype 1 and prototype 2. So if you're wanting to know like what are all the breaking changes, you would have to look at all three of those release notes. Okay, so that's the sort of boring stuff out of the way. We can now get into some more exciting things and new features. So I hope that's good news for everybody. Let's continue down the list and talking about game canvas. So Kim implemented a feature to allow pinning a specific journal entry page as a map note. So now that journal entries have pages, and this is something we previewed a little bit last stream, but let me pull up a page. Suppose I have a journal entry, the strange cavern. I've got one page of the journal entry that's like an image, one page that has a description of the location. Maybe I want to pin the location description to the map. I can drag and drop the page itself, and I can choose a specific page of a specific journal entry to say be the cave icon on this map. And so not only can I pin a specific journal entry at a top level, I can just pin the whole entry, but I can also pin a specific page. So if I've pinned a page, like location description, then double-clicking on the pin will take you directly to that specific page. If you do not pin a specific page and rather just leave page blank, then your pin will still function. It will just take you to the first page of the journal entry. So yes, so you can either pin, I can pin the description page, I can pin the concept art page, and those pins would then have different behaviors depending on which one I click on. Anything you want to add about pinning and pages, Kim?
No, I think it's fairly straightforward. Yep, you can pin the page. When you double click on it, it'll go straight to that page.
Yeah. It does, of course, interact with permissions. So the way that pins worked before is that, and do still work, is if you've pinned just the journal entry overall, as in like not a specific page, Whether or not a user can click on that pin to pull up all the detail will depend on their permission that they have to the... Is it to the parent journal entry or is it to the first page, Kim? What do we check permissions-wise if there's not a specific page linked?
There's not a specific page linked. It'll work as before. So
Okay.
it'll check the...
So it would be based on the permissions of the overall parent journal entry. And then if you pin a specific page, that would be based on players' permission to that particular page. So just to reiterate some of the page functionality, each individual page has its own ownership configuration, and that ownership can be inherited from the parent journal entry itself, or it can be overridden at an individual child page level. So for example, I could give like player 1 in this world, observer permission to the location description, and if I pin just the location description page, only player 1 would be able to to see that pin and to click through that pin to get to the location description page. Other players would be bound by the visibility of the parent journal entry. So there's a nice degree of permission control in terms of which players have visibility to which page, and that affects their visibility to the pin of that page as well. Really powerful stuff. I'm sure we'll get back to journal entries in a bit because there's some other exciting journal features yet to come. But we'll just continue in the order that the notes are written and talk about... Oh, this is journal entry stuff. Okay, well, let's talk about it now. This is probably the most exciting change in Prototype 3. And it's one that I think is going to really make you all super excited. Hopefully it works as expected. So one of the things we've been working really hard on during the V10 development process is considering a radical change to the way that text editing works in Foundry that moves away from TinyMCE. So as some of you know, TinyMCE is an editor that we've been using since the beginning as like how you can edit text and HTML in Foundry, and it's a good piece of software. But I think we've kind of taken TinyMCE about as far as we can take it, and we want to do some bigger and better and cooler things. And so we've been spending a lot of time working with a piece of software called Prosemirror, which is pretty fancy. It is basically a library that allows you to build your own editing solution. It provides all of the component parts, it provides all of the underlying abstraction and data modeling concepts, the workflows, but it kind of gives you the tools to build your own editor with lots of functionality. And so what we've done is we have finished prototyping that, and for example, this journal entry page where my notes are, if I edit the page, this editor here is Prosemirror, not TinyMCE, and we have full control over things like the formatting, which buttons we add to the header. We're able to support nice things like we can have some sort of like nice markdown style features, like a double pound sign becomes a header 2 element and a single pound sign becomes a header 1 element. So some things like the type of experience you have in Discord, like a, greater than symbol becomes a block quote. You can type an asterisk and you'll start getting an unordered list. We can define all of these sort of behaviors that sort of give you a real-time markdown style editing experience, but inside the Prosemirror editor. That's one big thing it can do. And we have plans to add a number more blocks, a number more formatting options to the top bar here. We're just sort of starting with a couple of things at a time.
It's just prototype.
Yeah. So that's one of the key features of Prosemirror, is that we have full control over it, although probably there is one interesting feature of Prosemirror that was probably like the main thing that drove us to exploring it. Kim, do you want to like show folks what that feature is?
Okay.
Something's happening here. I don't really know. I feel like I've been invaded. I've been red-fingered. Yes. So for those of you who are paying close attention, Prosemirror has the ability for us to implement multi-editor collaborative editing of text. And so, Kim and Andrew can both be editing this journal entry at the exact same time. And, Control S tries to save it to my desktop. That's probably a hotkey combination we should override. But yes, so like my changes went to Kim in real time, and then Kim's changes are coming to me in real time. And all of those changes are reconciled by the server-side orchestrator that runs in the backend, that is the centralized authority on merging and pushing changes to all of the editors who are, jointly working on the editing project. And this is...
I can save it, and it hasn't clobbered your changes, but you can see the journal behind has been saved as well.
I don't have the journal. I had the journal behind collapsed, but yeah, go ahead and make another change, and then you can save it. So what you'll see is that as Kim's making some changes, like in the collaborative view, this is sort of changes that he's making in sort of a draft state, where he's still, editing, but then once he saves it, that change got committed to the parent journal entry, and it got saved in. So yeah, I think this is something that just wouldn't have been possible for us to do in a good way, either at all or, possible to do in a good way with our previous editor technology. And so this was like this was sort of one of the big bets that we were gambling on with version 10 that Kim in particular spent a lot of time working on. And the ability for us to empower collaborative editing with multiple people who are simultaneously connected to Foundry VTT, able to use Foundry for collaborative world building, able to use Foundry for collaborative note-taking during a session, everyone able to participate in the creative process by writing text at the same time. I think this is just a massive, massive win. And it's something that I'm super happy that it's coming to Foundry, and I think everyone is going to really love it.
Yeah, the way that Prosemirror works happened to sort of dovetail just really well with the Foundry architecture. So it wasn't nearly as complicated as I thought to implement it, and it's working better than I expected. So a lot of big wins there.
Yeah, it's really huge. There are going to be in the development and testing phases probably a couple of little half steps backwards while we get some things up to speed. There are some like HTML blocks and things that we do still need to figure out how, well, not figure out, we know how to do it, but we need to implement support for them in Prosemirror. And so things like, Kim, I don't think we've done secret blocks yet, but we do definitely plan to. So like things like
that'll be done.
Things like all of your secret blocks that you have before, those will still work. All of the various types of HTML markdown that you could do before, we plan to, make sure that you can continue to do that. But there are going to be a little bit of limitations because Prosemirror will kind of only do what you teach it to do, and we haven't taught it to do all of the things yet.
It's going to take some time to build out all the features to reach parity with TinyMCE, but for now it's an option.
You did, for example, implement like actually, did you implement like drop entity links yet or not? Not yet.
I don't think any drag and drop has.
No drag and drop yet. Yeah, there is like some built-in sort of. One thing I really like about Prosemirror is when you're about to like drop data in, it shows you like a little sort of line that makes it really easy to see like where your inserted drop is going to go. Now we obviously need to teach Prosemirror to actually, do something with that data when you drop it, but there's some really cool stuff here that we're eager for folks to explore with Prosemirror in the prototype. Now, one thing that is really important to mention is that we haven't removed TinyMCE. Your pre-existing pages, do they continue to use the TinyMCE sheet, or yeah? So pre-existing
TinyMCE by default.
Pre-existing pages will use the old TinyMCE editor, and also what you'll notice is that each page, the page itself is a sheet, and you can choose whether to use the default page sheet or the Prosemirror sheet. Now, the Prosemirror sheet is kind of enabled for newly created pages, so we can help people to test this out. But if you go back to the default page sheet, this is the TinyMCE editor that has all of the functionality that TinyMCE has. So you'll be able to continue using TinyMCE and or Prosemirror. You can actually even go back and forth because of the way that we sort of parse the HTML and transfer it. So you can try out the differences between the TinyMCE editor and the Prosemirror editor. And as we get more feature parity in terms of making sure that Prosemirror can do all the things that TinyMCE can do, eventually I imagine that unless there's any major unexpected problems, we will eventually make the Prosemirror sheet the default one, and continuing to use TinyMCE will be sort of like the fallback choice.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, it's stored as HTML. There's some questions, so you don't need to convert between TinyMCE or Prosemirror because the underlying representation is just HTML. So you just load it in one of the two editors. It'll just work.
Yeah, so a couple questions about like editing raw HTML. This is something that I think is really important, and we need to figure out the best way to do it. Prosemirror can be a little bit limited in that regard, but we have ways to expand its functionality. We also have the option of maybe just enabling like a direct HTML editor. That's very simple. That can just be like a text area or anything else. We'll figure out some solution to enable people to like make their own fine-tuned HTML changes. But we're going to need a little bit of work on that. So that's sort of the type of like half step back that we may be taking with Prosemirror in order to unlock this feature. But we will be reclaiming all of that ground. And I expect that by the time that V10 is stable, we will have solved pretty much all of those things. I expect. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we have. Yeah, it'll just take time. It's a lot of rote work to just build out all of the nodes and all of the different toolbar, menu bar options. Just got to pour some time into it.
Yeah, it'll take a bit of elbow grease, but we will definitely get there. And yeah, and your feedback during testing will also be really really important to us. So let's get into some other exciting features. We have added the vision mode selection to the token config UI. That really undersells it, doesn't it? Is that the major feature, is that we added it to the UI? There's like a selector. We added a drop down. That's the major feature. That probably deserves a little bit of like a rewording to maybe sell it a bit more. In terms of vision modes, I think we can work on our advertisement of the feature in the notes before we publish that. But let's talk about vision modes, because it is a super exciting thing that many of you have been really waiting to see. I'm gonna maybe go to a map that's a little bit more dark colors and contrast. Okay, so we've got a scene, we've got a token. Many things will work the way you expect. I'm going to go and edit this token configuration. There's still a vision tab for the token, but now on the vision tab of the token, there are many more options than you previously had. So vision enabled, yes or no, this still works the same as it does before. So some actors don't act as a vision source. If I disable that, I can still move this token. This is something as a GM, I might use it for just like a generic NPC. Like, I don't really need to know exactly what this NPC sees. I don't need to see from their perspective. I don't really care. But if they have vision enabled, we're going to be in a situation where this token has vision. Vision range. So here's an interesting one. As part of the work on vision modes, we have moved away from a two-tiered system of radius like we have with light sources. Now, we did a lot of thinking about this, and we thought of lots of cases where, light sources in many game systems do differentiate between tiers of light, like a dim light and a bright light. But vision is one where it's almost always expressed purely as a range without a sort of denomination. And so we actually reduced this in order to simplify things a little bit. So token vision range is now just one number. Like your vision range is 30, or your vision range is 60, or your vision range is 120. But we do have some capabilities within that number that I think are really powerful. So we're trying to simplify a little bit, but, add complexity elsewhere as well. So in here, I'm going to configure the token's vision range. It could be, 10 feet, just a little small bubble. Could be 30 feet. Could be 60 feet. Could be unlimited if the scene allows it. Angle is still the same, so token may have a limited angle of vision that still works the same way, but it works with all of our different features that we have in addition. I'll just go back to 360 for now. Then we get to some of the new stuff that is much more advanced. And actually, I'm going to, just to give people a little bit more viewing space, let me expand this screen for now. I'll go back to the notes later. I'll come back to vision mode in a minute. This is the drop down that I was talking about. Vision color is a new one. So this, in a basic vision mode, we can give a token a certain tint, a certain hue of their vision. So suppose I let this token sort of see in blue. The perspective of this token is now that their local vision range has this blue tint to it that you see. And so just adjusting the color is something you can do even with like a basic vision mode. And as I go into, this room where there's lights and things, you'll see that the blue hue of the vision mode kind of interacts with the appearance of light sources a little bit. But that's just sort of scratching the surface of things. So in addition to changing the color, I can change the attenuation of vision. So this is like how much sort of a fade off we get with vision. So if I increase the attenuation to maximum, it's become much more of a sort of gradual fade. And at the minimum attenuation, there is a very sort of sharp radius where you can see the edges of the sort of blue field of vision. So you can choose any value of attenuation that you want on that range. Brightness allows you to customize the perceived brightness of light. So the higher that you set this value to, the better able this character is to see in darkness. So if we make this sort of maximum, everything has brightened up a little bit, and this token is able to get sort of a very sort of relatively clear view of the scene. I'll remove the color for a moment. So even though it's dark in this environment, the token is able to see in darkness very well. If we reduce brightness and take it down to minimum, then the tokens, you still have vision, but that vision is kind of quite darker, quite more obscured. Not as clear when it is, when there's darkness within the scene. So I'm just going to set brightness back to 0, which is the normal default. Saturation affects the intensity of color that this token perceives. So if I crank up saturation, then everything that this token is able to behold becomes a little bit more vibrant in the color space. And that's something that affects the canvas as well. So like these torches in the distance, can become more or less saturated when they come into your field of view. So with reduced saturation, everything becomes a little bit more sort of sepia or like monochrome. And this is something that's gonna show up a little bit more later. So I'll go back to a default level of saturation. Contrast is sort of the depth of shadows, the depth of contrast that you perceive. So if I crank this up, you'll get more of a stark difference between light and dark colors, more contrast. If you crank this down, everything gets a little bit more muddied, where the difference between light and dark is a lot less noticeable. Depending on what sort of special effect you want for how a token perceives the world, you may want to adjust that, but I'm going to go back to a default level of contrast for a moment. All of these can be configured jointly, so if I want like a token with high attenuation, very bright, very saturated, very high contrast green vision, I can achieve a pretty, unique effect. Now, whether you like this effect or not depends on who you are and what you're doing and why you want a character to perceive the world that way. But these are the types of capabilities that the system has. So I see someone saying like, yes, the token's vision could get like all red when they go into like a berserker frenzy or something. Yeah, I think like red with, make it darker and high contrast and, sort of lowered saturation. This could be like you're badly wounded or something. There's all kinds of fun things you could do just to play around with the sliders. Now, we don't envision each use case though being kind of entirely custom. While you can customize these properties for base vision, the real power that we built into the system was that we wanted to make it easy for you to quickly switch between different sort of vision presets, or what we call them as vision modes. So vision modes have much more capability than just these sliders. I'm going to talk a little bit about what they do visually, and then I'll talk a little bit about what they do programmatically. So we've enabled some basic vision modes for the purposes of testing. It's very easy very easy. There's a very direct pathway for modules and systems to change vision modes and to register new vision modes and to define custom vision related behaviors. I'm going to showcase what that looks like in just a moment. So the options under this drop-down, we've got basic vision, dark vision, tremor sense, light amplification as some different examples that I can show. So let's enable dark vision and see what happens here. So I've enabled dark vision, and everything within this token's field of vision that does not have illumination from an external light source is now completely grayscale. However, the light in the distance that the token sees is still colorful, because that is a real light that the character is able to perceive. So this lack of coloration is sort of the reflection of the fact that this character is seeing in darkness as if it is grayscale with a sort of set of dark vision rules. If I were to, for example, put like a blue, let's say maybe like a green light right here, you can see that the area of the green light still, still reflects the coloration that light provides. And so the token might be sort of like part in, part out, and you can see where part of the world is grayscale and part of the world is colored. And so, yeah, so this is an example of a really powerful type of vision mode that is going to be very commonly used. And this is kind of like the 5e dark vision rules, but those rules show up in other systems. It will be very possible for other systems to then, customize the way that dark vision works so that it works appropriately for the rules of their system. Now, with the dark vision mode enabled, I still can change some other things, like I can make vision red, and so instead of being like purely grayscale, I can have this like very desaturated red vision where the dark vision is. The thing that's important to note is that the key difference between like dark vision as a vision mode and normal vision is that this light source takes precedence over the dark vision in the dark vision mode. But in the basic vision mode, it's a little bit different. Like there's an interaction between the redness of the vision, even at low saturation, there's an interaction between the color of the vision and the color of the light and things like that. So what sort of takes priority over what is one of the things that vision modes can have control over. I also can change the contrast. Like if you wanted like a very high contrast dark vision, that can start to be like sort of spooky, I guess. There's different things you can do to kind of combine the behavior of some of these sliders with the vision mode that you've selected. So there is an interaction between the vision mode and the parameters of the slider. Now, when you change your vision mode, some of the sliders will like automatically adjust to a new default value. Like when I enable dark vision, saturation will like automatically get set to -1, since that's kind of like the standard for dark vision. Let's talk about some other vision modes that can showcase some other things that vision is capable of. So one that is really very exciting is tremor sense, and tremor sense is a special example of something that works in a unique way that is not the same as dark vision, and it's not the same as basic vision. So here's an example of tremor sense, and we can change this animation, but this is what we built in for our prototype, for our demo. It's a very cool animation of sort of like a radar vision that kind of animates around you. Now, you'll notice one thing very specific about tremor sense is that there's no light, because what you're sensing here is you're sensing vibration, you're sensing tremor in the ground. You're not actually seeing any light. So here there was a light source here. There was a light source here previously. But when you're in the tremor sense vision mode, you're not actually seeing light anymore. You're experiencing the scene in a different way because you're using a different set of senses as your perception. And just like with other vision modes, we can change like the color. Like if we want like a sort of golden, like a golden orange for the tremor sense, whatever thematically suits your monster or your creature best. But this is an example of a vision mode that when this vision mode is active, lights within the scene are disabled, or we change the way that other lights are rendered because of the vision mode. And that's a capability that vision modes have, is that they can override the way that lights appear. They can override the way that other things appear. Now, I see some questions about like, well, what about other tokens? Like, what do I perceive here? And I want to mention a couple of things on that front. So let me add just a token here to the scene that can be beheld. Now, I want to mention, here's like a sort of boar man person. I want to mention that we're not done yet with this. So one of the things that each vision mode can do is it can customize the perception rules for can the perceiving token, can the vision source see a target token? Now, we haven't done that yet, and so I don't have it to demo for you yet. But you can imagine the direction that we're going with this feature as we continue to work in the development phase and in the testing phase, is that for something like the relationship of this, boar creature and this token, whether or not you can sort of see the token with tremor sense is something that we can programmatically control as a rule element for enhancing conditional visibility. Now, what it's doing right now is it's just testing direct line of sight, the same as any other vision mode does. So if I go around the corner here, I lose perception. But we can enable things like tremor sense to like pass through walls or things like that. So that's something that we have not accomplished yet. and it's something that obviously the rules of the system take a stand on how a thing should work. But we do have the capability, we do have the framework to do things of this sort of type now. So you'll be able to define custom visibility testing conditions and other things like that, which will be very exciting. And again, tremor sense also works with things like saturation. You could have like a totally grayscale tremor sense, combination of sort of dark vision plus tremor sense. You can create all kinds of cool effects. One thing that you're seeing here is that vision modes can have their own animation, just like light sources can. Now, we don't have an animation drop down of like choose the animation, but these are things that can be configured as part of the vision mode. So how does the vision mode appear? Is it this sort of rotating radar? Is it like a pulse, like a sort of sonar pulse that goes out and comes back? We can have all kinds of different, options for that. And then I'll showcase light amplification. That's another cool one. So light amplification, you can think of it sort of as maybe like night vision goggles, something like that, where you have something that lets you see beyond the normal level in darkness. So I could create something like with like a light green sort of like night vision goggle, and you'll notice that this in fact does not disable other lights. In fact, the opposite. Lights, when you're perceiving the world with light amplification, light sources are going to become like very, very bright as they're, you're very exposed to those light sources. Hopefully there's not too much background noise, but yeah. So, in this room where this torch is, like if you're wearing your sort of night vision goggles, that's a very, very bright light that you're perceiving. Yeah. So I'm sure there's many, many questions about vision modes and what you can do with them. I think it would make sense to sort of answer a number of those. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about like what does it look like for a module or for a system to exert some influence over what vision modes are possible. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to pull up my IDE here. I'll zoom in a bit. Yeah, sorry, there's someone outside with like the mower / leaf blower, so fortunately that's happening, but maybe not so fortunate that it's happening right during this stream. Okay, so there is a new class in the Foundry VTT API called Vision Mode, and it is how a vision mode is defined. And then in the config that any module or system can link into, there is under config canvas vision modes, there's an object where which vision modes are available to the software at any given time are enumerated. So things like dark vision can be declared as a vision mode. You can have custom vision modes. There's a number of parameters that allow you to just configure the vision mode directly out of the box without subclassing. And then there's some other things that you can do if you wanted to, if you wanted to say even like subclass the vision mode class, you could exert even a little bit more control over the way that things work. But each vision mode can have on activation, on deactivation, animation, and visibility testing behaviors that you can define that can customize what happens when a vision mode becomes active for the first time, what happens when that vision mode becomes inactive, what happens each frame as an animation for the vision mode, and what happens in terms of testing visibility of conditional visibility of whether one token with a certain vision mode can see another token at a particular point in time. So there's so much that can be done with this system, and it relates to other systems too. So things like the the tile and token elevation changes that I showed before. Visibility testing can end up relating to that. It can end up relating to, like, if this boar man is is playing poker here in the bar, and we've got, some sort of like vision mode, we can implement a custom visibility testing where you might be able to see that token's outline in like a red, warm-blooded glow or something. All of that is really possible to do with this system. And so we've been working really hard during Prototype 3 to sort of set up the foundation to make it possible. And we ourselves are eager to continue playing with it and to continue adding more features that will make it more feature-rich by the time we get to stable release.
Yeah, an incredibly involved piece of work.
It is a very involved piece of work, yes.
Iteration went into making the API really good and really flexible, powerful.
Yeah, I think just a lot of thought and a lot of design work has gone into that, and we'll continue to go into it, especially as we start to get feedback from our from our community of testers. Okay, let's continue on with the next batch of notes. Next up is adventures, so that's a very exciting one to showcase as well. We're making like the slowest progress through these notes, the slowest.
I imagine the bug fixes probably weren't
the slowest progress. There's so many notes, and we're like barely at the beginning. But it's a lot to go over. Oh, they're literally like right outside. I'm getting hazed right now.
It's a little bit. It's coming through a little bit.
Yeah.
Not much.
Vroom, vroom, vroom. Okay. Adventures. So, I'm sorry. Kim, entertain the audience for a moment while I just lose my shit.
I can answer some questions that have come through already that I've kind of flagged. Someone talked about the collaborative editing, how it's implemented. Yeah, it uses a lot of the heavy lifting is done by Prosemirror, so you have a WebSocket connection. Everyone has a WebSocket connection to the central Foundry host, and so when you're typing, what it's doing is it's sending state updates to Prosemirror's document model. It just sends the little steps to the central authority who applies them, and the central authority negotiates about who has got their steps applied and who missed the boat and who has to redo their steps and all sorts of stuff like that. There's no DB updates until someone clicks save or you close it, which also triggers a save. There were some questions about auto saving as well. We might do auto saving. It's not that. It's that funnily enough, the biggest hurdle to auto saving is that in the server we can't create HTML very easily because we don't have a DOM. That's the biggest hurdle, but it's definitely easy to overcome just with a bit of work. But it's not present currently.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm safe. Maybe.
Okay.
Let's talk about adventures. So we enabled in V9 and now sort of officially in V10, we have enabled the adventure document, which provides a way for creators, that's largely the target audience, to create bundles of content which can be consumed jointly. So bundles of interrelated content. So it could be a combination of scenes and actors and tokens and items and roll tables and journal entries. And you can create a bundle of content, and we call it an adventure, although it doesn't necessarily have to be an adventure, but we needed a name for it, and that seemed like a good one. You can create a bundle of content, an adventure, which can be then populated to a compendium pack, and that compendium pack provides a means for distribution of the adventure, the same way that you can currently distribute content through compendium packs in modules. Now, instead of needing to have, say, I'm sure we might even have an example of this where like an older style adventure, an older style module might have to have 5 or 6 different compendium packs. Like these are the actors, these are the items, these are the journals, and then they might have to implement some sort of central orchestration mechanism to say like, well, we need to pull the actors from this compendium and the items from this compendium, and we need to make sure that they're linked and the IDs don't change and all of that. So like the process of getting content packaged up and the process of getting content unpackaged out was hard in both directions in Foundry up until this point. So we now have a tool that is a solution for that. So let me demo what that tool looks like. Now, I want to give a disclaimer here because I want to be clear that we're also A, not done, and B, don't view this as being like a complete solution for all things content distribution related. There are many aspects of the process of how you get content to the point of distribution, and then how as a end user you consume that content. There's many facets of that, and this does not address all of them. So there are still some things that are like potential friction points that do still exist that we will be proactively working to address moving forward, but they're not specifically related to the functionality of the adventure document. So what we've done now is we've implemented support for the adventure document for importing and for exporting. There's lots of other things adjacent to that that are also opportunities to improve that this does not touch on yet. So let's go through the process of what this can do. I'm going to create a compendium pack for now just in my world, but I can show a process of what it might be like to create like a module for distributing an adventure in a minute, if that's something that people are interested in. So I'll click create compendium. Adventure is now an option that I can choose inside the dropdown. So we'll do like my excellent adventures. I'll make it plural because I might have more than one. And I have a compendium now, and this is a compendium that currently is just coming from my world, so it's not very well suited for distribution. But it could be a compendium that's coming from a module, it could be a compendium that's coming from a system. Any package that can provide compendium packs can provide adventure compendium packs. All right, so I'll click on the compendium pack. It's empty, but unlike other compendiums, there is a button at the bottom called Create Adventure. So I can click that and I can embark on the process of putting together an adventure. So this UI is the Adventure Builder UI. There's two sides of the UI here. One is for importing and one is for exporting. So this is the UI for exporting, for packaging up an adventure. So I'll give it a title, my first adventure. Every adventure can have a banner image, so I'll choose one. Maybe I'll appropriate an image from Abomination Vaults, since I'm not going to be distributing this. Let's choose, let's choose one of these banner images. My adventure can have a caption, so like the adventure begins. And then we can also have an HTML description for what the adventure contains. So some subtitle. And this could, of course, eventually be like a rich text editor. Some description that contains HTML about the adventure. So this is like the basic configuration of how to define the adventure. Now I can add content to it, but I'll just pause for a second. I'll hold off on that. I'm gonna click build adventure. What happened here is my adventure ended up being packaged into the compendium. If I click on it, I see like I've got my first adventure. I've got what a comical piece of concept art. I've got a banner, I've got my caption, some overview of what the adventure is. There's contents now. There's nothing listed here because the adventure doesn't contain anything yet. So it's pretty useless so far, but it's a start. What I need to do is I need to add some content to the adventure. Now I could have done this when I was just creating it at first, but I'll right click on the adventure. I'm gonna click rebuild. And what that lets me do, I can go over to the Contents tab, and this makes it very easy to add stuff to the adventure. So the process of adding stuff to the adventure is I just take things from my world and I add them. So let's suppose I have some scenes, like this one, the Smuggler's Hideout. I can just take the Smuggler's Hideout and add it, and I can add a scene here. I can then, remove it if I change my mind. I can add a whole folder of scenes, just drag the folder and drop it. I can add all of these scenes to the adventure. It'll show me what is going to be added. Over on the Actors tab, suppose I want some bosses. I'll add some dread bosses and some random encounters, and maybe just this one specific acolyte, because why not? So then I can, configure, say like, oh, I want all of the random encounters except the swarm of beetles. So I'm just going to remove that one. And I can see here exactly what content is staged to go into the adventure. And I also see the folder hierarchy. So the adventure builder is maintaining that. Let me actually make this more full screen. The adventure is maintaining the folder structure. As I'm adding this stuff, I can add some, all of some items. Maybe I have like a whole bunch of journal entries for this adventure that need to go in here. I can see all of these things that are going to be added to the adventure when I package it. And, roll tables can be added, magic items, add a roll table, add some cards, add some playlists, add some macros. Really, whatever I need to be included, I can put it into the adventure here. And the things that are highlighted in green are basically like, if you think of like diffs, or it's sort of like, these are things that are being added that weren't there before. So if I click Build Adventure, I'm now going to have packaged this adventure where if I open it by left click, I can see that it now contains all of this different stuff. And if I were to import it, it would import all of those things into my world. So the way that I can then do, if I go back to rebuild adventure, I can see now all of these things are in white. They're not in green anymore because they're like in there. If I were to say remove a folder of items, all of those items would highlight red. That would show me that these are going to be removed. But maybe some other items are actually going to be added, or maybe actually I don't have any other items, but maybe I can remove random encounter actors, but I can add lingering dead, and so I can see that some things can be added to the adventure, some things can be removed from the adventure, and I can just rebuild it, and then the contents that I've rebuilt is what I have packaged up and ready to go. What this is now ready to do is that anyone who receives this compendium is able to import the adventure, and if I were to try and do it, it will warn me that like I already have content from this adventure in my world, so I'm going to click no. I'm going to not import it over top of what I have, but I could. It would be safe to do that because I'd just be replacing what I already have with this. So actually, why don't I go ahead and import it, and you'll see that there is a progress bar. Uh-oh. My first bug. Darkness max may not be less than darkness min. Okay, I have some issue in my adventure content, so my import failed, but such is life when demoing a prototype feature. But yes, anyways, you can imagine that you would bring this to a new world that doesn't have this content yet, and someone would be able to import it. You can have multiple adventures in the adventure compendium. So I could have like my second adventure, and give it a different banner, give it a different stuff. We'll just choose like I'll pretend that I'm Book of Lairs by Kobold Press for a moment. Add some
oh shit.
Add some items. Oops, I didn't save my image. Yeah, so I might have a second adventure in this same compendium pack. And you can have all kinds of... Oh, thanks for all the subs. That's very awesome. You can have a compendium pack that has multiple adventures in it. So this could be something like, actually, ironically enough, Book of Lairs is a really nice example of that, where there's like 12 or 20, actually 20 like different sort of one-off adventures, that each of which can be individually imported. Each of those adventures can be its own listing in the adventure compendium. It's also fine for an adventure compendium to just have only one adventure in it. There's nothing wrong with that. And this allows you to, get your adventure style bundled content packaged up in a way that everyone can import it from you in a very standardized way. Now, one thing that I can point out is that when you are defining an adventure, oftentimes you have special needs in terms of like, I want to customize some way that the adventure imports. Like I want to give the user some special options, or I want to have some special workflows that happen when the import happens. So it's worth noting that each adventure has its own sheet. And the default sheet for the adventure is in fact like where the adventure import occurs. So the adventure importer is the sort of default, but any module could easily overextend the adventure importer with custom functionality to change the appearance of this UI. If you want to make it look entirely different, they could improve the behavior. So like what happens at these various steps of the import process. If you want to import the data that you're importing, like one of the things that we are configuring like for the import process with Abomination Vaults, for example, is with the Paizo packages. Like when you import the actors, we always pull the latest, greatest official source data from the compendium packs. So instead of just taking whatever actor data was stored to the adventure, we have an extra workflow where we go to the source system compendium packs and we grab like the latest, greatest versions of each of those actors, so that if there's any changes over time, the adventure also get benefits from those changes in the upstream data, keep the actors fresh. That's a special workflow that we can very easily implement by just extending the adventure importer and extending prepare import data, and we can implement our own custom workflows there for like how the content gets imported. So each individual adventure can have its own import sheet that configures like how that import works. And so you can extend the adventure importer sheet and customize that behavior to your heart's content. Yeah, so that's adventures. And while I said this doesn't handle everything, so some things this doesn't handle because it's not intended for this to handle it, is this does not handle like creating a module for you for distribution. This does not handle ensuring that all of your art assets are properly located in that module directory so that the adventure content that you create and expose through that module contains all of the art assets that you need it to contain. It does not automatically publish the module to the Foundry VTT website. It does not automatically do your taxes, as Blue Sky says. So yes, there are things that this does not do that are kind of outside of that process, like actually creating the module that will house the adventure that you're going to create is still something that you have to do outside of this tool. But we are thinking about working on some tools that will make that process of creating a module and then creating an adventure in that module. Thinking about this as more of like a production pipeline where we can add additional steps to the production pipeline to make that seamless for people as well. All right, that's the adventure stuff. Any thoughts, Kim? Any comments?
I remember when we kind of popped this in just at the end of V9, was it?
Yeah.
For internal use for Demon Queen. So it's been worked on quite a while, and it's very comprehensive, and it's very good. And I think my first impressions were that it makes perfect sense with how Foundry does everything. It's like a missing piece that's finally been added.
A couple of one key comment about the adventure is that basically like it views a world as the source of truth for how the adventure is built. So for the creators out there, what you'd want to have is you'd want to have a world which is like the state of that world is basically, this is exactly what I would want the user to experience when they import the adventure. So like which scene is active, which scenes are in the navigation bar, which, macros are on the hotbar, which journal entries are in which folders. Exactly the state of the world. The adventure gives a way to kind of capture that and then give it to another user. So you would be creating your adventure content within a world, package it up, and then package it into a module that the module becomes what you can distribute, and then the end user imports it back into a world. And as part of both the export process and the import process, things like the IDs of documents are all preserved. So like if you have a map note, a pinned journal entry page on your world map, that relationship between the journal entry, the page, the pin, the scene, all of those relationships are automatically maintained throughout the process. So everything that links to anything else continues to link to it without any special work needed. So document links in journal entries, tokens that link to actors, journal entries that link to map notes, all of the, anything that links to anything, those links will just sort of still just work. And so that's kind of the crux of the philosophy of how the adventure concept approaches the problem.
You have like your development world where you're just building things, and you go back to that when you want to make changes and updates, and then just repackage it. So you keep that sort of pristine.
Yeah, and I see a question from Byron Codes of, does it update content from the world on rebuild? That's exactly right. So if I were to click here, rebuild adventure, but say before I do that, suppose I were to go into this and rename this creature to acolytes, plural, or like, my custom acolyte. In the world, my custom acolyte here has changed. So when I build the adventure, that ID reference of what piece of content got built into the world, the adventure now contains my custom acolyte, which was changed because it pulled all of those changes when I rebuilt it. It pulled all of those changes from the world. So the world is like the source of truth of what's going to go into the adventure. When you build the adventure, it's pulling all that content out of your world and packaging it up like a snapshot. It's taking a snapshot of the state of the world at that point in time. So all you have to do to update your adventure is just make changes in your world and then just rebuild it. So take time, edit my changes, change my journals, put another one of these custom acolytes on the map, and then all I have to do is just go rebuild the adventure, and boom, that change is now packaged in, and I could release it as like a new module version or something. Pronax2 asks, will you get warnings if you try and put a scene with links into the adventure but forget to put the journal entries in? Not at this time. It doesn't sort of do a full search to try and see if you have any broken relationships. You may end up, if you forget to put in some related content, it wouldn't work. It's possible that in the future we could add some function to try and like search to verify that everything that relates to everything has been added, but that could be potentially pretty complex. So I think as a starting point, you have to take charge of deciding what should be put in. Yes. Wizard for Hire asks, like, will it track position and current HP of actors? Yeah, so anything like anything related to the scene, like if this scene is built in, like the fact that this actor has its health bar displayed and only, has 4 hit points, and the fact that it's red, like that exact representation of this token will be preserved in the adventure. So as Byron Codes points out, there is sort of a potential side use of the adventure as a way to handle backup. There is kind of an attribute of that to it. Now, backup is only as good as, a couple of things, but, if you're using this as a system to back up data, you probably want to make sure that that backup is stored somewhere other than the data that you're backing up. Otherwise, you're vulnerable to just losing it anyways. So a degree to which this doesn't solve backup for you is that, like, the place the adventure goes is not really that different than the place that the data is that you're trying to back up. So it doesn't really keep you that safe. Yes, there is an attribute of, like, you could use the adventure system to, like, take a snapshot of your world at a certain point in time and potentially use that to, like, restore back or something like that if you needed to.
Yeah, like if you run the same module for multiple tables, once you're done, reset back for the next one.
Yeah, I see some questions about, like, can we try testing up import it in a fresh world. I would love to show that. I do have a bunch of other stuff to get to, and so that's something that I might come back to later in the questions, if that's okay with everyone. To do that, there would be a couple of extra steps, and that would basically be like make a little module that can be shared between worlds, and then put the adventure in that module instead of just in a world. Yeah. Okay, we've been going for about 2 hours. I think we have more notes to cover, but I think this is probably a good time to take a quick break and to maybe do a giveaway when we get back after the jump, and then to go through the rest of the notes. So what I would suggest we do is to pause here. We're not going away for good, but we're going to go away temporarily, and just take a 3, 4, 5 minute break. And while I am taking that break, we will also get set up to do a little giveaway. So I'll grab everybody who's in chat right now. So all you need to do if you are watching the stream, all you need to do is be sure to log in to Twitch, because if you're not logged in, you basically won't show up. So be logged into Twitch, and that way you'll show up in the chat list. And if you show up in the chat list, I will grab your name, and you will be entered into the giveaway. And we'll give away a couple of software licenses and maybe a couple of copies of the Demon Queen adventure, since we can give that away too. Without further ado, we're going to take just a short break. But when we come back, we'll do that giveaway, and we will do some more review of our awesome notes. So please don't go anywhere. And let's see. Put on a little music and toss us to an AFK screen, and we will be back in just a moment. Hello. Welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us over that short break. We're excited to get back in and chat about a couple more notes and things that we're working on, things that are changing. So let's go ahead and get started with that giveaway that I promised. So I created during the break, I created a really quick little roll table for today's stream, and 327 of you qualified, excluding anons and moderators, for the giveaway. And so we'll pull out the big old D327 and give it a couple spins. And everyone channel your good luck, but we're going to give away a couple of Foundry VTT license keys and a couple of Demon Queen Awakens adventures. So if you're a winner, you can choose whichever of those you would prefer. If you already own Foundry and you'd like the Demon Queen Awakens adventure, you can take that. If you don't own Foundry, or you know someone who you'd like to give it to as a friend, you can take the Foundry license. And yes, so let's go ahead and spin the Wheel of Fortune. So if you're selected, all you have to do is in chat accept your winning and say whether you would prefer to have the license or the adventure. So our first winner, all the way down to the Z's. We made it almost all the way to the end. Number 325, Zaytam1. Zaytam1, you are our first winner. Second winner, Mortiferous93. Mortiferous93. I see Zaytam. I accept. Congratulations, sir. Would you like a Foundry VTT software license, or would you like the Demon Queen Awakens adventure for Foundry VTT? Depending on which you already own or which you would like. I'll go ahead and spin a third Wheel of Fortune while we wait for acceptances. We've got Doji Dutch, number 87. Doji Dutch. You are our third winner, as Zaytam has accepted the software license. Congratulations to you, Zaytam1. I hope you really love it, and I'll get that to you after the stream. For those of you who are winners, what you need to do is you need to register an account on the Foundry VTT website if you have not yet done so. Then send me a DM on Twitch and remind me that you were a winner and which you chose, whether it was the license or the adventure, and I will issue that winnings to you. But I think we are still looking for a response from Mortiferous93 and for Doji Dutch. Let's go ahead and give it a fourth spin and see what we get. Blackjack 92. Not 92, 22. Blackjack 22. Number 35. Blackjack 22. If you are here, you are a potential winner.
Right.
We'll see if we get responses from any of these winners. Of course, Zaytam. I mean, you luck was with you today, and I'm just happy that folks who tuned into the stream are like really excited for the chance to get the software. It's great when we're able to give it away to someone who's like really excited about it.
Hope it's not all of Zaytam's luck.
Yeah, hopefully not all your luck. Hopefully you have some remaining.
They start using Foundry and only roll once.
Yeah.
They're not.
All right. Well, I don't think I've seen any acceptances from our other winners, so I'm going to disqualify Mortiferous93 and Doji Dutch. I'll give Blackjack 22 a bit longer, but you're out. Doji Dutch, you're out. Let's roll again. Devin Terex. Suppose I could be a matter of opinion. Devin Terex, you are a winner. And Archesney. Archesny, you are also a winner. We'll see if Devinterex or Archesny are here, and they are eager winners.
Oh no.
Oh no. See, this is why I tell people there's going to be a giveaway. We want them to stick around.
Yeah.
Must be present to win. All right, we continue on in our quest for winners. Kremdes. 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 If you are here. Oh, that was a fast accept. I like it.
Yeah.
Kremdes on the ball. Thank you, sir.
Archesny is here, apparently. Yeah. Archesny is here. They didn't say I accept. They said hey. But I don't know.
Hey's a good start.
A good start.
Hey is a good start. Yeah, we'll have to see if Kremdes prefers the software license or the Demon Queen adventure, but you don't have to decide right away. You can choose later when you DM me. Let's give it one more roll. I'd like to end up with 4 winners if we can. D1 Ax, D1 AAKXS, Axx,
Oh, that's
D1 Axx, Axxis.
Oh, didn't they claim? I think D1 made a joke earlier about claiming someone else's
D1 Axxis. You are a winner.
I actually won.
Yeah, you actually won. You channeled. You just believed hard enough. Yeah, fantastic. All right, I think we are still waiting to hear from somebody. I want to end up with 4 winners if we can. Did we hear anything from Devinterex? I don't
Yes.
think we did.
Oh, right, no, not Devinterex. No.
No. Okay. I know we've gotten accepts from Zaytam and Kremdes and D1 Axx. Diacasis.
Archesny just said hey. I don't know.
I'm sorry for making fun of your. I'm not making fun of it. I'm trying to work through it. I'm just struggling my way through. I
mean, some of these names you can't even be blamed. They're just incomprehensible.
Devinterex is out. Archesny is out because hey is not an acceptance. We're gonna go for one more winner. Dalvin, number 69. Nice.
Nice.
Dalvin, if you are here, you are winner number 4.
Oh my God.
69, how can I not accept? Yes, I'm propositioning you for an exchange. You will receive a giveaway prize from us, and in exchange, you will accept our giveaway prize and maybe say nice things about us.
I think they accepted amidst the sea of nice. Yeah. They did.
I need an adult. Yeah, so do we. Okay. Yeah, well, we have 4 excellent winners. Zaytam, Kremdes, D1 and Dalvin. Congratulations to the 4 of you. What you'll need to do is, if you don't already have an account on foundryvtt.com, please register one. And then send me a DM on Twitch and let me know if you prefer the software license or the Demon Queen adventure. Whichever you prefer, I will get that to you. And congratulations on your winnings.
Congrats. You get to use the new Foundry website to sign up if you haven't.
That's true, although the registration page is not yet converted.
Oh, right.
That'd be a good one to do soon, because that's kind of part of the like new user experience with the website. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier in the stream, but yeah, it's coming along nicely.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
It really does look lovely.
All right, well, let's get back into some notes. I mean, there's a lot left, but I think what we can do is we can kind of start speed running a little bit more from here, and just sort of hitting some of the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, the bug fixes don't probably require a lot of explanation.
One thing that I wish I'd mentioned earlier on when I was talking about the breaking changes to package manifest is that Kodi added a nice feature that provides a migration API. So if you have an existing system or module and you want to make sure that your manifest is made up to date with the new changes, there is a new API right on the module object in your world that you can call migrate manifest, and it will enact the manifest changes. It will actually like commit those changes to your file. So basically, like, we will fix your manifest for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. All you have to do is ask us to do it by requesting that we migrate the manifest to the latest and greatest specification. So that should hopefully save you some time in, taking action on these changes. Let's see. We improved, this is a pretty nice one. We improved the functionality of form data extended, which can process documents and forms, such that when we are processing an array and then using that array to update an object, the array will just sort of work directly now without you needing to wrap around your form updater. So like there's some example in the GitLab issue where like previously, what you would have to do is basically like do some like expand the object, get the keys, convert the keys to an array, and then push that array as the thing that you update into your document. That was a little bit awkward. So you don't have to do any of that now, at least in theory. Your arrays will just update automatically as long as the input fields of your form are appropriately named using the numeric indices of the array elements.
I think you have to be like targeting an array field, right? It doesn't just work off arbitrary form data.
It doesn't work off of arbitrary form data. This actually works when you are updating a data model. So when you're updating a data model and when that data model contains an array field specifically, if the array field encounters, sort of an array-ish object, it will accept that as an input. Let's see. So we talked about tile occlusion. I didn't really emphasize this at the time, but I did make a change in terms of like when the occlusion is defined. So there's a slight, almost like intentional lag now. Like when you move under the tile, there's like a slight lag before it occludes. This both serves two purposes. I think it kind of helps the UX a little bit because it shows you can see the token moving under the thing for a split second before you see down through it. And so I think that kind of helps to emphasize that you've moved under something visually. So I think that like slight degree of lag serves like a nice little UX purpose, but it also serves a purpose of helping to, from a performance perspective, like if I were to drag and drop all the way through, like because it's debounced, it doesn't apply the actual occlusion until you stop moving. So it kind of makes it a little bit more tangible that you're like moving under something. But if you stop under something, that's when the occlusion happens. So that was just like a little change to the UX of how tile occlusion ends up visually presenting itself. We made tile and drawing resize handles easier to grab by expanding the hit area. So this little handle down here in the bottom is now easier to grab. It used to be that you kind of had to click right on the magic pixel to get it. So now it's just easier to snag the resize handle. Let's see. Interesting. Second bug of the stream. I deleted a drawing and something didn't successfully remove itself from my scene. So that's one to document. I don't know. Let me see if I can reproduce it. I can delete the drawing if I highlight the drawing, but if I'm like doing something with the drag handle at the same time that I delete it, there's something going wrong. So some combination of drag handle plus deletion is being a little funky.
Almost certainly Cody's fault.
No, it's my fault because Cody had nothing to do with this one. I don't want to spend my Cody bus chips too quickly because we're going to get to some stuff later where I might start spending those.
Oh, fair enough.
We made a little efficiency improvement to the wall intersection detection. So like, when you have two walls that cross like this, we have to treat those as an intersection for the purposes of computing lighting and sight and stuff. So that, so that intersection point in the middle is taken into account. We made an efficiency improvement in the way that computation is done. All right, so we have a new canvas class that's part of the canvas hierarchy that adds a little bit more flexibility to folks who want to register custom layers for the canvas. This is work that's going to extend a little bit into development 1 as well. But the let's see. So we have a couple of different canvas layer classes now that simplified things a little bit. So the base canvas layer is class canvas layer. And this is a nice opportunity to show something that the API docs can do in a pretty helpful way. So if I go to our new API documentation, and then we still need to categorize some of these classes, but if we look at the canvas layer class, it's a pretty nice thing. It shows you the hierarchy of like what other classes extend this one or inherit from this one. So something like the canvas background alteration effects class, you can tell that it inherits from canvas layer, and you can tell what extends canvas layer. So the new docs, it's a nice feature of them. But yeah, so we separated a little bit of the hierarchy, and I'll show you this with the interaction layer. So all of the like document layers for different types of documents that you interact with are now, they remain subclasses of placeables layer. Placeables layer extends interaction layer, which encompasses all of the sorts of interactivity that you need when working with the canvas. And interaction layer extends canvas layer. So in terms of implementing new workflows on the canvas, actually, this is another thing to note down. This note in our patch notes isn't actually right because we don't have a document layer, but that wasn't intended. What is intended is that all of the document types that you can interact with on the canvas are subclasses of the interaction layer. But if you want to define some sort of canvas interaction workflow that doesn't rely on documents, you can just use the interaction layer directly. And so this provides like an extra level of the API hierarchy where you can use it to extend the canvas depending on your use case. It's just a little bit of an API enhancement. Updated the workflow for scene, light source, fog of war parameters according to vision modes options. So we already talked about vision modes, but vision modes needs the ability to modify or override the way that other things are computed. And so that took a lot of piping to get the plumbing, the sort of wiring for that put into place. Rework the cache container to make providing or acquiring a sprite more intentional workflow. and to automatically render that container's sprite if one has been provided. If you're familiar with the cached container and the way we use it, this probably means something to you. If you're not, you probably don't need to be, and you don't really need to worry about this. We added back the ability to pass options into the particle effect class, which we had removed those options kind of inadvertently in the last prototype release.
That was some feedback. So
yeah, that was some developer feedback that allowed us to bring that functionality back.
Yep.
I talked about improvements to the perception manager. We were able to improve it to abandon the use of a very bespoke sort of throttled debounce and instead hook into the pixie rendering loop more directly. Performance improvements to the speed of polygon triangulation, a very important workflow. Specialized vision effects shaders for various effects in the vision modes. Pretty self-explanatory. We've demoed many of those. Introduced the vision modes class. I already showed that. Made a change to avoid unnecessarily re-rendering a drawing during drag and drop. So if you have a drawing, let's see if this works or if there will be more drawing bugs. Suppose I have a solid fill drawing here. The performance of like dragging and dropping drawings like this is improved because we were doing some things in the workflow that weren't necessary as part of just like the drag and drop, and so this is faster now to drag and drop drawings.
Nice.
What's that, Kim?
Nice. I think that's one of dev numbers.
Yeah, we get very, very useful, very actionable feedback from dev numbers. It's a really helpful community member.
Yeah, absolutely.
We implemented an API for rendering journal entry page sheets as part of their parent sheet. Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about this and maybe how it relates to the sort of multi-page view of the journal?
Yeah. So when you have, and because journal pages are configurable in the same way that most documents are, you can give them custom sheets and they can have special types. When you're building those sheets, you need to be able to specify two contexts for the page, not just when it's in edit mode, but also when it's being viewed as part of the larger journal entry, which is not something that you typically have to do with most other documents. So we had to develop an API for that. So when you're building your sheet now, you can check the is editable flag, and that's how you'll know. Because if you're in the non-editable state, then you're being viewed in a journal, or you're being viewed by someone who doesn't have permission. But in general, you want those to look the same. And if you are in the is editable state, then you're being edited. So
I'm just gonna take like some journal entries. So basically, I'm like taking some text from the Demon Queen Awakens adventure. And I'm not actually running the module, so the CSS is broken right now, but like that's fine. I'm just like sort of combining them as pages by sort of dragging and dropping some things together to create, so like what might previously have needed to be many different journal entries can now just be like one journal entry for the adventure overview that has all of these different pages that you can kind of go through. And one thing that people may have, or may not have seen yet is that the journal entry overall can be displayed just one page at a time, or you can toggle it to sort of display all of the pages in serial. So you can just sort of scroll and read through as you go, like a long, all of the pages concatenated. And how each of these pages is rendered now has a custom method like that comes from the particular page type. So we're expecting modules and adventures and stuff for sure to like start implementing custom page types for something like a quest or a key location or like a character dossier, those can be custom page types that can have their own entirely custom layout. They can have their own custom appearance. You could have a very beautiful layout for like what a character dossier might look like, and that character dossier can be embedded directly within a longer body of text that comprises the overall journal entry. So there's a lot of modularity in the system.
Yeah, I imagine for one of your sci-fi systems where you have the very structured data like name, date of birth, like height, weight, or like a murder mystery. You have a special page for that's rendered in a special way, and you have both the edit mode and then when you finish editing, how it appears in the journal. So it's a lot of stuff. Although now that I say that, are we missing the system data from the journal page model?
I don't remember if we added that or not. Let's take a look.
Add that.
I know we have like individual cards that have system data. Yeah, I don't think journal pages have system data.
Well, they will by release. There's types. It will correctly get system types, but I think oversight there. We forgot to include system data.
Yeah, maybe. Do they have? Yeah, they do have types. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's intended, and we'll add support for that as missing. But yeah, we do anticipate having the ability to support really beautiful components of journals with custom data structures and stuff. I think that's something that we really want this system to empower. Yeah, let's see. Moving on, option to render a journal sheet to a specific page. So when you call render on the parent journal sheet, you can pass a particular page either by positional index or by ID, and it will jump to that page and render that page specifically. You also can pass a certain mode, whether like single page or multi-page mode, as part of your render request. So you can configure, how the journal looks when it expands out, whether it's like if you want to jump to one specific page in like single page view, you can do that.
Yep, that's right. Just an API method.
Let's see. Enhance the tooltip API to allow. I think we actually didn't do this, and so this is we did something here, but this is one where I think a note for someone on the team who's watching the stream to take down is that we need to actually change the wording of this in the patch notes, because we took a different approach to actually doing this, I think.
Fair enough.
Implemented a way to register custom enriching logic that will be called as part of text editor enrich HTML. Kim, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah, this is something that did manage to do in between Prosemirror work. So yeah, you've got the issue up, but if you imagine, you can have document links in Foundry's format. You can have inline roles, sorts of things that Foundry can understand these special text patterns that then get converted to buttons and anchor elements that you can drag and do all sorts of things with. So the idea here is that a module or a system or anything really can register some regular expression that will be matched to the HTML, and then it has the power to return its own HTML element from within that. So that will get included in the final rendered text. So, like, very simply, if you wanted to do your own content links with your own special format, you wanted to I think one of the examples was like a quest document or something. You can do that now, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just a regular expression and a function which returns an HTML element.
Yeah, so this allows modules to sort of hook into the way that HTML, rich text HTML is presented, so that you can implement certain like module or system specific patterns that end up resulting in producing a particular effect. And that can really be almost anything.
Like a nice one is like a rules text. Like D&D Beyond kind of has these you can hover over the grappled condition, so you could have like a little easy pattern, like, I don't know, some square brackets, single square brackets grappled, and it will just look it up in your compendium, and yeah, lots of stuff you can do here. Another important thing, because someone mentioned Pathfinder 2nd edition, is that these run in an async context, because in rich HTML will be becoming asynchronous eventually. So if you are a system that does that, you need to switch your enrich HTML over to being async, and then you attach your enrichers. And you can look this stuff up from compendiums.
I was thinking like one thing that would be really nice to do for like the 5e system, just sort of brainstorming about like ways to use this feature. I mean, there's so many ways, but you think about like a particular weapon. We typically like to sort of put like the sort of weapon summary block at the top of the description in terms of like, attack, like plus X to hit, 3d6 plus Y, average of, 11 damage, reach 5 feet, just the sort of standard formatted, like this is the weapon attack text. Like you could add a custom enricher, say to 5e, where you might put like at the top of your description something like, weapon attack or something like that. And then you wouldn't have to write it all out. You could just sort of match that string and then dynamically, populate that or something. Like there's all kinds of use cases that you could have for just adding like layers of user convenience to what can be done.
Actually, that touches on another thing which I don't think we've mentioned in the patch notes. There was the to anchor method of documents added. It's on client document mix-in. So this controls how a document gets turned into an anchor element. So you could, for example, for all item anchor elements, you could override to anchor and provide that sort of information, customize it entirely. And how that looks. So, yeah, it's quite a powerful one.
So like if for the system or something you need to embed some extra metadata in your like actor links or your item links or something, and as the system you subclass the actor class or you subclass the item class, in that subclass you can customize like what attributes the anchor link for that type of document gets. So you can add in extra metadata, you can change the CSS class, you can style it, you can, whatever you need to do to change the way that dynamic link is generated. So this gives you a place to hook into that and, to customize at a module or system level how those links are generated.
Yeah. There'll be I'm sure that people have already got tons of ideas for how this will work, and I think it's gonna be really, really nice.
Yeah. Okay, here's a cool one. We modified the build pipeline to build our entire commons library using a roll-up bundle to really substantially reduce the number of HTTP requests that occur when you're loading in. So if I probably should have loaded the network tab before I clicked load in, but let's see here. So the whole let's see, I need to zoom out a little bit. I've made this too big. Yeah, there it is. So the whole commons library is now bundled. It's not like minified or obfuscated or anything. It just gets this little sort of awkward like IFE wrapper, but that doesn't really hurt the readability too much. But it results in, reducing from like, I don't know, it was really getting up there. It's probably like 60 files or something at this point, and that ends up being just a lot of HTTP requests to load all of those. So wrapping it up in a bundle like this is a nice way to economize on those HTTP requests. while still preserving readability for devs who can then, debug and inspect and see, see what's doing what. It also,
that's good.
Yeah, is a nice change. We did some tidying of the base Canvas class to improve the documentation. It's not really anything specifically worth highlighting. We fixed a bunch of bugs, file picker, upload timeouts, worlds incorrectly getting unknown compatibility tags, some issues with GM ownership permission and scenes, fixed an issue in prototype 2 with updating values of the token via the token HUD. Those should be fixed. Fixed some issues with active effects failing to save. Improved data migrations to input objects passed to the old .data.update method, in order to make sure that that old signature of method would still accept data provided in the old input format. So basically, if you're still using the old method, we should expect that you're still providing old data, just to reduce the number of compatibility breaks. Hardened some assumptions of the system data field. We further added functionality to the schema field to allow the entire schema field to be optional. So you could have an entire inner object that can be entirely optional, and that outer key can be undefined. That's a nice improvement to the data model. Improvements to default drawing data, roof occlusion. We already showed some of these things. We really improved the API and flexibility of the sprite mesh. So this is pretty low level. Most of you probably don't use it, but we have this custom class called a sprite mesh. Basically, it extends the pixie mesh, but it extends the pixie mesh to behave like a pixie sprite. So it's pretty cool. It's basically got the best of both worlds in terms of the user experience of a sprite with the power and capability of a mesh. And so we use it in a bunch of places where we know we need to render a texture, and we want that texture to behave like a sprite with some of the APIs that the Pixie Sprite layer has. But we want it to have some of the capabilities of a mesh in terms of control the geometry, control a shader that is layered on top of the mesh that can fine-tune the final resulting appearance. So we just kind of worked on continuing to improve. This was mostly Secret Fire's work. Improve the sprite mesh construct so that it can kind of be a drop-in substitute for a sprite. Now, you probably don't want to use it as a drop-in substitute for a sprite unless you kind of know what you're doing, but it is possible. Fix some issues with polygon meshing and the pixie mesh. We improved a feature of hex grid rendering to address an issue with the top left hex not quite respecting the columnar or row-wise even versus odd alignment. So those cases should all be handled properly now. We fixed an issue in the earlier prototype with video tiles, like this little drift globe that in the previous prototype you couldn't play the video tile. Now you can play the video tile as expected once again. Fix some issues with the timing of updates for things like the canvas vision mask, or certain issues with destroying of pixie display objects. Fixed a little cosmetic issue about the appearance of rulers on gridless maps. We closed a couple of little memory leaks that could build up due to textures being loaded but not properly served from cache. So that's always a good performance benefit when we identify and close those loopholes. Interface and applications. Getting to the end, and then I want to take questions from chat. Show to players on journal entries. Kim, there's kind of some nuance in terms of like showing the parent entry. So when a GM clicks show players and they're on a certain page of the journal entry, like what happens? Like what gets shown to the players see?
Yeah, so this is work in progress. The plan is, if you want to show the entire journal entry to your players, you click show to players on the journal entry, and they'll see all of the pages that they have access to see. And if you want to show an individual page to the players, then you will right click one of the pages and click show to players on that, so that second bit is not implemented. And then there's some additional improvements we have, like show to only these players, also show to players and give them observer permissions at the same time, so now they can see that journal forevermore, stuff like that. But this was just a sort of fix show to players for this prototype release.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great feature, and I'll look really forward to like having the sort of page specific ability to show like just this one page, or like I don't know what we'll call it, but something like grant to players, or like permanently reveal to players, or something like show it and give them permission. That's a nice little like UX saver. It just saves some clicks. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We, let's see, fixed a couple of idiosyncrasies of the application updater. We fixed an issue with, like, a very weird issue with the location of pings. Sometimes, like, this actually showed up in the last dev stream. But yeah, like, there's a pretty weird issue with, like, pings not actually going where you clicked under very specific circumstances. Very specific circumstances. It is an upstream bug, but it's an upstream bug that we were able to work around and fix as well.
Yeah, I think it's an upstream bug. I spent some time trying to reproduce it in the Pixie Playground and I couldn't. So I haven't ruled it out as Foundry specific, but it's so weird. And when I did debug it in Foundry, I did end up just stuck in the interaction manager. Yeah.
See a question in chat about how do you do the pings. There's 3 types of pings. There's a long left click, which is this type. So just click and hold in a particular location. There is a alt and click and hold, which is this sort of red alert ping. And then there's a shift, click, and hold, which sort of only works for Game Master users, but it will zoom in and drag the view to a particular location if you want to like draw attention to a thing, or a token or something. So that's a shift and long click.
Yep. The speed, the long press is configurable. I think it's like 500 milliseconds at the moment, but you can configure that. You can change that. Are the ping types easily modified by the system? There is a pings API, which allows you. I don't know if you. Maybe I can demonstrate the off-screen pings. I'll ping like somewhere up.
Yeah,
at the top.
Give me a second to like actually change my. I'm gonna make my view a little bigger. But yeah, I'm just gonna zoom in on the like central tent. So if you want to ping somewhere off-screen. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can see up at the top. There's like a green arrow sort of pointing off screen to where Kim is pinging. It's really nice. It sort of puts an arrow in the direction of the alert, and then if I were to like zoom up there, I can actually like see the ping. But if it's off screen, it'll just kind of like alert me that someone's pinging, outside of your current viewport.
Yeah. So all of those pings are configurable with the ping API. So if you want to create your own, you kind of get a little bit of help. There's some things you can do off the shelf, and if you want to configure it entirely yourself with custom animations, obviously you can write those. You can override the animate frame method and write your own pings for systems and stuff. Yeah,
it's a really the off-screen part is a really nice touch. Kim did great work on that.
Roman suggested it, but yeah. Yes. It's pretty cool.
Let's see. I think just one or two other notes. Yeah, so we made an improvement to the text areas that are disabled by switching to use the read-only flag of the text area element instead of just the disabled property. Yeah, this is sort of confirming no when changing server settings, just a little bug fix. Fixed an issue with text inputs that specify data dtype number would not return a null value if the field was blank. That's just a little bug fix. Community feedback on that one. So yeah, we did get some really good community feedback that turned into bug fixes for P3, and we're hoping / expecting to get a lot more as we move into the development phase, and we're going to rely on all of our community devs to help us kick the tires on this build and on this generation of release, and to get it to a point where everyone is happy with the stability and functionality. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of the notes. This was like a bit of a marathon, but well done. We made it through. I want to take some questions from chat, and then we'll do that for 15 minutes or so, and then I think we can wrap up.
All right. There are lots of questions that were way back. So if you did ask those questions, then you'll have to repeat them now because Twitch chat is gone.
Yeah, so for Revelo Waldo, the VOD will be available almost immediately on Twitch, and then it will be uploaded to YouTube sometime later this week. We don't do that in an automated way, but Matt will pull it and get it uploaded to YouTube. So, yeah, sometime later this week. But it will be available like immediately on Twitch as soon as the broadcast is done.
For journals, can you have default note icon modifiable within the journal entry / page itself? Good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's something that's come up a number of times and we just haven't done it yet. That'd be a good one to do in the testing or development phases of refinement.
Yep.
Custom enrichers, I believe, happen after the normal enrichers, I think.
Yep, after. Oh, I'll do. Will there be folders to group and organize journal entry pages? It's possible, because I thought about this because Zeal had the same feedback. I looked at this and I thought, actually, this is possible because journal entries or documents can have multiple children embedded types. So you could also have a list of embedded folders alongside and do that. But I don't think we have plans to actually implement that feature. I think it's possible, but you already have your sidebar with all your journal entries, and those are in folders, and then you have the pages. There's a lot of hierarchy in there, and I'm not sure if folders are the best UX that we can offer there.
Yeah, I think we have to balance, complexity, feature richness, straightforwardness of use. My thinking a little bit is that sort of, this is a little bit philosophical, but I kind of think of the journal entry and journal entry page space as a little bit being differentiated by non-linear versus linear content. So I think that journal entries themselves are kind of like nodes of this sort of non-linear content cloud, this tree. There may be sort of nodes and edges of entries linked to other entries, and each journal entry is sort of a topic that can be related to other topics, but not necessarily in a strictly ordered way where you have to consume this journal entry before you consume this other journal entry. So there's not like a linearity of, consumption to it. Where I think that pages within a journal entry are kind of a linear mode of organizing content where, you consume page 1 before you consume page 2, before you consume page 3. And while you can always skip over pages, you are skipping over a page rather than just kind of moving to an unrelated space. And I think that like having folders and hierarchy in the sidebar of journal entries, I think like that structure works pretty well for sort of like non-linear content that can kind of be intermixed in any particular way. But once you're within a certain journal entry, you are kind of consuming that content in a more linear format. And there, I think I think folders get in the way of that rather than enhancing it. But I don't expect everyone to agree, but I do just think about it that way. And so that's kind of like my own vantage point and my own perspective on some of the design trade-offs.
One thing that we do have planned is for the individual header nodes within a page to appear in the sidebar that you can click between. There's a lot of extra stuff that we can do with headers that some are more feasible than others. But as like the very basic level, grabbing a page, grabbing its header nodes, putting them in the sidebar and showing as you scroll between them in the same way or click on them to go through them is doable.
I think what Zeal's feedback is getting at a little bit is a difference of opinion around like, should a entire complex, multi-hundred page book, should that multi-hundred page book end up being a single journal entry with like that number of pages? And that's not the way I think about it, and that's not necessarily what I recommend. I think, books can be so complex. They can be very non-linear. They can have sections that are the pages get put in a certain order because the physical constraints that they have to be printed into a physical medium dictate that they must be. But the content within a book is not necessarily linear, nor should the content of a single book be constrained that it has to all go into one journal entry. I think, in my view, it's still completely right that a book of that kind of complexity would end up being some number of journal entries, 10, 15, however many. But within each of those topical journal entries, you might have a certain linearity of content. And so I think there will be a little bit of a balancing in terms of figuring out, how to use the tool for which purpose and what ends up creating the best user experience. But that's kind of the philosophy of how I've been thinking about it. It's obviously a point where people will have different opinions.
Yeah, we don't have that much time, so we won't go into it more. But there's definitely good points raised, and we can discuss it further. We've got the issues that we can, if you want to talk about on Discord, we can go over it some more. There was one thing which I wanted to talk about, which was using the Prosemirror editor outside of journal entries. There's nothing about the Prosemirror editor which means it has to be like its collaborative editing features, which means it has to be unique to only journal entry pages. Currently in the prototype it is, because we're using the journal entry UUID as a proxy to identify a unique Prosemirror instance. So all the server needs to know is which instance. It needs to have an idea of what a unique Prosemirror instance is. So as soon as we can identify, and we have some API for saying differentiating a different editor that exists anywhere on any sheet as being unique in some way, because like an active sheet might have several text boxes on there, so you can't just use the actor ID, for example. So as soon as we can do that, then the Prosemirror editor itself can exist anywhere.
We do have API support to programmatically create a Prosemirror instance.
Yes.
So, in Prototype 3, if you wanted to experiment with it as part of, say, like, instead of using like a handlebars helper that creates it for you, you could, as part of your sheets, rendering workflow, you could create a Prosemirror instance programmatically for that sheet, and you can give it a unique ID that you just devise yourself. So there is a way to do that.
Yeah. So.
Question from Revelo Waldo. If you're adding headers to the journal entry sidebar, can modules register their own custom header styles to show up there beyond the H1, H2 of Core Foundry? I'm not sure I understand this question. So what's in the sidebar of the journal entry? Maybe I'll take a stab at this. What's in the sidebar here isn't specifically tied to the like semantic HTML of the individual page, but rather each page has a title. So these are just the page titles independently of what particular like HTML element is used to render them. Maybe that answered the question. I don't know. For the new journals, is there a chance we'll get a find function to find specific text? Yeah, currently the filter that we've implemented is a little bit rudimentary. Like it will look for just titles, I think, right?
Yeah, just the page name.
Now, it would be nice to offer a possibility of some sort of full body text search. And I think that's something that if we don't do it, I'm sure that a module will. But I think that we should keep that on our radar of something that I think would be nice to do.
Not a trivial problem.
Not a trivial problem, no.
Text search, but
Yeah,
I agree, it's nice. Sorry, Revel Waldo. Yeah, the plan is to put headers in there, but they will just be HTML. They will just use the normal HTML header links. There won't be a way for modules to say, oh, also put these. But what you can do is you could register your own custom sheet. So the journal entries, they can have configurable sheets. So you could load up a different sheet, and then you have full control over how that sidebar looks anyway, and put whatever stuff you want in there.
Flamewave asks, can we edit other documents contained in compendiums? That is possible now, actually, but will continue to be possible in V10 as long as the compendium is unlocked. So if the compendium's locked, all of its contents are locked for editing as well. But if the compendium is unlocked, you can edit it. So if I have some roll tables in here, I can unlock the compendium, and then if I open the compendium, I can change the types of indefinite madness that the character can succumb to. All right, folks, keep hitting us with your questions here. I'm sure you have more. It doesn't have to be necessarily a question. It can always be something that you'd like to see demoed, or like if there's anything that you'd like me to show again in a different way, or whatever you're curious to learn a bit more about.
Is video and PDF still available as journal entry page types? Yes. They don't do anything currently. They're still available. The intention is to show videos and PDFs. So shouldn't be too many surprises there. The same way that you can kind of have an image page and you link to one of the images in your assets and the image is rendered. Similarly, you might link to a video. The video has a lot of options in the data model for like autoplay and volume and things like that, which you'll be able to configure. So yeah, we'll get around to those at some point.
Mm-hmm. There's a question about vision modes from Hugo Prudente. Asks about like how would you model some creature that has 30 bright light vision and 120 dim light vision. So I think I'd love to learn more about what you have in mind there, because we did a lot of brainstorming And we failed to think of an example where you would need that type of approach. Now, obviously, different game systems can have different rules, so it might be a particular system or maybe a homebrew rule or something, but what we were thinking of is that at any single point in time, a token has one way that they perceive the world. You might have multiple options, like you might have a token that, you know, normally has dark vision, but they can choose to put on their night vision goggles and then they're switching from one mode to another mode. But in terms of like simultaneously, your vision mode is kind of mutually exclusive. You sort of can only see in one particular way at one particular point in time. So yeah, so we might need to consider that a little bit more carefully. It may be that we need to bring back differentiation between bright vision and dim vision, but we didn't end up having a good example that would motivate that. And so for like Matt's example, that like a dragon might have blind sight to a certain distance and dark vision to another distance, what we envision doing and the direction that we're planning to go with it is that like if you have a token that can access multiple vision modes on your HUD, you'll have like, so right now this one has dark vision, like on your HUD there might be like an eyeball icon with arrows or something where you can cycle between how that token perceives. So we could like switch between, you know, 120 feet of dark vision, and let's pretend that this tremor sense is blind sight. We can switch between like the 120 feet of dark vision and the 60 feet of blind sight by just sort of toggling which vision mode you're seeing from like at that particular perspective. But due to some of the interactions and complexities of the way that vision modes override other aspects of the canvas, it's, or so I claim, too complicated to try and simultaneously resolve multiple complex vision modes at the same time. So what we need to do is we need a system of designating like which one are you looking as at the moment, and you can kind of switch back and forth between blind sight and dark vision, but only one at a time. And what we want to do is make it easy to switch back and forth between them without needing to like pull up the token sheet and be like, oh, you know, how should I forget, how should this be configured? What was it again? Like, was it 120? Did it have a certain color? Like, be able to have certain like vision presets for a token that you can alternate between.
Yeah. Similarly, the union of two tokens you have selected, also a very tricky problem.
Yeah. I think like Hugo's example of like a feat for warlocks where like you can see in dim light within 60 feet as if it were bright light and darkness as if it were dim light. I think that would be supported, but that would require probably like a custom vision mode. You might call it like, you know, custom devil's sight or something. Like, I think that would require a custom vision mode to be set up that implements that particular rule set.
So many questions on headers. Yeah, about journal headers, we'll be able to link to specific headings from outside. This is a common piece of feedback. This is one of the things that's not as easy to do. So maybe I'll try. I'll see. Like with the custom enrichers and stuff, it's probably doable, but I don't know yet. Any? Did you already go over tours? Oh, someone's asking for a tours demo.
We didn't show tours this stream. We did show them last stream. I'm trying to think if I can remember how to programmatically trigger the tour. I'm probably not in a good position to demo it right now because I don't remember exactly how to programmatically trigger the tour.
Well, you can check the other VOD if you want a demonstration of tours. The other.
Question from Too Old for This. Is there a plan for a customizable feather at the edge of vision for a better blend with the environment? We already do have some of that, and we do have a custom sort of attenuation slider that allows you to configure how that blending works. So for example, like if the token sees in this sort of bright misty red vision, I mean it's sort of tricky on this map that's like white snow because the vision gets very sort of stark, but you can control how much attenuation there is, which kind of controls the smoothness of blending. So that sort of already exists, although there's some things that we might need to continue improving about it in order to ensure that, it hits the desired feature set for aesthetics. But yeah, in theory, that sort of smooth blending should be possible. Question from Ikabodo: if there's no dim and bright light, will Foundry not be able to handle 5e technical difference? I don't want to throw any confusion on this point. There is still dim light and there's bright light. So as far as lighting levels goes, there's absolutely dim and there's bright. Yes, definitely there is a separation there. We're not getting rid of that. When you configure a light source, it has a certain amount of dim light, a certain radius of bright light. We realize that's mechanically important, and so we're not getting rid of that. What we were proposing to get rid of is, specifically as it relates to your sight range, the need for two different ranges. One range of like dim sight and one range of bright sight was something that we didn't really feel fit elegantly into the requirements of the system, but this is something that we obviously need to collect feedback on.
And custom vision modes be set to completely ignore walls. Yep.
I think probably. We need to think about if there's the right way to flag walls as like temporarily ignored for the certain vantage point. Conceptually, the workflow would allow for it, but we might not have the right attributes in the wall data to ensure that like you can easily like turn off a wall without necessarily like changing its underlying data. So I think we need some flag to allow you to like temporarily disable walls without actually mutating what the data of the wall is.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Question from comment from Puddle Images. The Perfect Vision module does a pretty good job with showing normal vision and dark vision simultaneously. So what we're thinking of having is certain vision modes that are treated as like exclusive, where like you can only kind of have one token that sees in that way at a particular point in time, because it's like too complicated to sort of do it in combination with another mode. So like if this token has 60 feet of dark vision and this token has 30 feet of tremor sense, if you select them both together, it gets a little bit weird. And so how to combine vision modes is not really very clear in this case. And so I think we need certain vision modes which are gated to require sort of exclusive token control, that if you want to see as the tremor sense, you need to like only have this one token selected. Otherwise, like if you have a group of tokens selected, we can give you like some sort of placeholder for vision, but this is sort of like a nuance of user experience that we haven't really worked out yet, but I think we need some way to have a notion of exclusivity around these vision modes. If, however, you have two vision modes where this one is just tinted blue and this one is dark vision, here you can sort of combine them and it's sort of okay. So some vision modes don't need to be exclusive, but some probably do need to be because of the nature of how transformative they are for the rest of rendering.
A few more questions about like elevation and stuff, which you might want to, I don't know, have some thoughts on those related to the sort of new scene levels that's coming in a later version.
So everything related to elevation is just very intermediate for now, and we're laying some foundation that we're going to use ourselves come possibly V11 if we prioritize scene levels at that time. I'd like us to, but we haven't committed to anything, so we might not do it V11. But yes, so when the time comes for scene levels, we have to do all kinds of things in order to support sensible vertical stacking of content. We need to know things like, optionally, how tall is a certain wall, how tall is a certain token, because currently, I think the way that most people use the token elevation system is when someone says this token is 10 feet up, what they mean is like the base of your feet is 10 feet up, but maybe you need to know how tall the creature is as well if you want to decide can they see over a wall or not. So there's all kinds of things that is needed in order to do a better job of verticality as it relates to multiple levels of sort of vertical space that can be explored in a top-down framework. And so yes, certain walls starting at a certain height and ending at a certain elevation, and therefore having a height, tiles that do the same, all of that, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and all of that would be required to do in much more depth if we're to support that system in the future. But no, I don't know if there was a question of whether we're doing that now or not, but we're not doing it now. That would all be future stuff. Question from Suspect. Is there a way for the server host to set different defaults for client-side settings? If not, will that be added? Sane defaults are good, but custom is better. Yeah, interesting question. I suppose there are some client-side settings where you would like to be able to sort of pre-configure them for your players without having to ask the player to configure them. I think the question was, are there plans for that? I think I'd have to be honest and say no, there's not plans for that, although it is I understand the idea. Like, I understand what the value would be there. So, I mean, it's a good idea, but it's not something that I think we have plans to work on.
Yeah, there's always so many good ideas and little bits of polish and things, and we tend to not have the time to do them in between all of the really big features that require some dedicated thought and time to doing. How is the new journal system going to work with modules like the World Anvil integration? Do we have any plans to update that to?
We'll need to do a little bit. Now, there is some question about like how to map the concepts on World Anvil, because World Anvil has its own sort of article hierarchy tree. There is a matter of opinion around like what maybe should become just a page versus what should become its own journal entry. And I'm not sure whether we'll have a clear rule on that. It might be more of a matter of opinion. So I don't know. I mean, I'm certain that we'll want to make sure that that module remains functional and remains a great experience for people to use. But we do have to decide kind of when you import data from World Anvil, what should be a page within an entry and what should be an entry itself.
Another height question, which I think has been asked a lot, so we should probably answer it, about creating zones in which the size of the tile will have a different elevation value, I think, in the zone versus elsewhere. So my understanding is that you would take the individual tiles themselves and give those an elevation or a z-index value rather than having some sort of zoning tool.
Yeah, I don't think zones is the way that we would solve that, although there are other things for which we wish to have the possibility to define zones. So I suspect that in the future, like the way we try and design things is we kind of think about the tooling and how to generalize the concepts around tooling as best we can. And so the concept that you would be able to define like a certain area within your scene, like, you know, I'm going to just sort of define this arbitrary polygon, right? This polygon that I've just defined, we do in the future, and this is sort of part of like the triggers system, it's part of multiple levels. Like we need a way to define like this particular region has some meaning, and then we need to attach that shape to some other mechanical things. So like whether like a certain visual effect happens here, or the weather effect that's elsewhere on the canvas doesn't happen here, or, you know, as soon as you step into this polygon, your game pauses and a combat encounter starts. Like these are all things where, like, in order to do those types of systems, we need the ability to define a zone or a region of the canvas, the region of the scene. Whether we're going to use that for elevation and have like elevation zones, I'm not sure. I don't think so. But we haven't begun to build that system. We haven't begun to build that system yet. So I can't really say. Question from Say Cheese: will there be a shop for official content? We are really doubling down on our model of empowering publishers to sell their own content. That's kind of the model that we use and believe in. There will be, and there is, a sort of centralized marketplace for Foundry content on DriveThruRPG. There's a Foundry VTT section there, and I think that will continue to grow and continue to improve to provide sort of a centralized shop. Now, you specifically ask about D&D stuff. No, unfortunately, there is no plan forthcoming for official Wizards of the Coast D&D content, although there's certainly official third-party OGL-based D&D content that we do support. You know, lots of great stuff in that dimension. My voice is going, so I think it's probably a pretty good time to start wrapping up. Related question from Robot Cabbage about with the D&D Beyond merger with WotC, will it affect the integration modules? We're not sure. You know, we want to support our developer community to use the tools that are available, and currently D&D Beyond does provide an API for them to integrate with. It is a tricky one, though, because, you know, that API isn't necessarily, like, sanctioned, but it's also not sanctioned. It's just, it exists, and by its existence, people are using it. And so, you know, will that situation change? I feel like the answer is almost certainly, but how and when that situation will change, I don't know. As for our perspective on that, we would love to have official integration with a digital D&D platform. I mean, we would jump at the chance to do that. We would love to have the ability to offer official D&D content to our users, presumably via account linking to like Wizards' own digital account solution. And if we could give people a way to link their account to WotC and to access the D&D content that they've legally purchased, I would love to see that happen. But is that something that is like on the plans or close to happening or whatnot? No, it's not. It's something that would require, a mutual interest to present itself in order to do that. I think while it is possible to provide something along those lines today, I don't think we would not do that. Like, we wouldn't go to the effort of building that ourselves unless it was something that was done, publicly in collaboration with Wizards of the Coast, like with everyone in agreement that this is the way and this is what we're going to do. So yeah, maybe someday I would love to see that happen. I mean, certainly I really hope to see an email float into my inbox about exploring that opportunity, but it's something that we have to wait patiently and hope that that's of interest on their side. And it may not be. We'll see. All right, I think we're about out of questions. Let me give just a pause and I'll see. Any news about Chaosium since they hired someone for getting their products on more VTTs? Yes. It's probably not my place to announce their news, but I can share what they have already announced is that they are working on content for Foundry in an official capacity, and they have someone on board who's working on it. And so we are eagerly supporting Chaosium's efforts there and giving them the assistance from our side that they need to get that process going and continuing. And so I don't have any timelines to say, when that's going to result in purchasable products from Chaosium for Foundry, but it is in the works, and that's something that I'm super excited about. All right, I think this is a good point to stop. We'll just loop back to saying, we're so happy to have made it to 2 years, unbelievably. It's really surreal to have be celebrating our 2-year birthday this week. Thank you so much to those of you in the community who are champions for Foundry, sharing it with your friends, with your local gaming circles. Thank you so much for sticking with us and supporting all the hard work that we're doing and giving us a chance to continue making this software the greatest that we possibly can make it. And I think all the work that has gone into V10 is really exciting, and I can't wait to continue the process of making it as stable and as polished as it can be to make it the daily driver for how people play games on Foundry. And your feedback will be a big part of that. So please stay tuned for that prototype update. And if you do wish to test it, please test it responsibly. I can't emphasize this enough. It is a prototype build. It is unstable. There are bugs. Most importantly, it's important to note that getting a world from V9 to V10 is a one-way street. So if you test this new version, your world data will be migrated in the process. It will be migrated to be compatible with V10, and you can't go back. So the only way to go back is by having taken a backup before you tested, or test in a different environment with a copy of your data that's different. So please test responsibly. Please don't just update to V10 prototype 3 because you're excited about vision modes and you want to play with it, and then you can't go back to stable V9. Make sure you're testing in a careful, cautious way. Make sure you back up your data so you don't lose anything. If you need some help knowing how to do that, there will be an announcement. It's in our patch notes. It'll be in the patch notes how to do that. But that being said, if you are a developer, if you're interested in these things, please help us to test these new features out because we need your feedback to make V10 as good as possible. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. Quick reminder about upcoming events this week. Tomorrow, big releases from Paizo, very exciting content releases. We'll have an article dropping as well. Thursday, we've got the Foundry Then and Now stream. I'll be back on Twitch, I think with Matt maybe from the team accompanying me. I don't know, we'll see. We're gonna have some hijinks and just have fun and look at how much Foundry sucked when it was brand new and how cool it is now. And then Friday, we've got the PaizoCon panel. Saturday, we've got the Abomination Vaults Let's Play, actual play. Just all kinds of good stuff going on all week. So please stay tuned, and we will be seeing you around for the rest of our celebration week and beyond. Kim, do you have anything you want to shout out as we wrap up for the day?
No, nothing from me. It's just it's incredible to see 2 years come by and see all the features we have in V10. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate you hanging out with us, seeing the new stuff, sticking with us. I'm going to put up an AFK screen, and then I'm going to see if there's someone using Foundry that we can go raid and share the love to. So stick around for a minute if you want to participate in that, and I'll find someone that we can go shower with the love of the Foundry community. But I'm going to go throw an AFK screen up for a moment and find that, and then we'll kick off a raid, and that's how we'll wrap up our stream today. All right. Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Don't go anywhere. We're gonna find someone to raid.